professional people such as yourselves here, guys, and it makes us all better and all stronger for it. So thank you so much for doing this tonight. I really do appreciate it. And yeah,
Good to be here.
yeah. Tim, are you awake?
I am barely awake. I think I'm on the wrong show. You're talking about professional people and
I
everything. I think
know.
I'm.
I'm sorry, buddy. I'm
I clicked
sorry.
on the wrong link.
I know. I apologize for screwing you up that way, but we're about 45 seconds away here on getting the big show going. And please don't take offense if I haven't said hello to you in the chat rooms. With a panel of 6 people, a chat room, and making sure everything's hooked up, it's kind of hard for me to do everything at once. So this is one of the rare times where I'm not going to be able to type in everything. I will try and get it in. I promise you, I will try and get it in. I'm just not sure. I will do my best, though. We got about 24 seconds before we launch the show. I want to remind you that if you're new here, a great way to support this show is hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and you can listen to us 7 days a week here at Spaced Out Radio. And yeah, do whatever you want. I don't care. Let's just have a show. Here we go, everyone. I'm going to just mute you guys, and let's rock and roll. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Now, UFOs, mainstream media. It has been a bone of contention for many in the UFO field watching the mainstream media start covering this subject on a daily basis. Now, for years, the mainstream media has taken this subject with a grain of salt, basically calling everybody who's seen a UFO or an alien a tinfoil hat-wearing person who doesn't have much going on in their life. Yes, I am stereotyping, but that's literally the way it's been taken in newsrooms for decades. However, the story is waking up. And I think we have one of the best media panels that the UFO scene will see in a long, long time. From the New York Post, we have Stephen Greenstreet. From Sauga 960 AM, we have Marc Patrone. From Vancouver, a 30-year journalist and journalism instructor from BFC Consulting, we have Bruce Claggett. From the debrief.org, Tim McMillan. From KMOX in St. Louis, Missouri, we have Ryan Recker. And we have one of the best bloggers and researchers when it comes to everything paranormal, supernatural. He's following the UFO world quite heavily. We have Michael Huntington. And gentlemen, I want to say a big thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time to join our audience, because this is the week. This is what a lot of ufologists have been waiting for decades. Not since the early 90s have we seen anything this crowded in the news run about UFOs since the early days of disclosure, which never happened. Stephen Greenstreet, I'm going to start with you here because you are with the New York Post and you've got a great podcast and you've interviewed a number of people regarding this subject here over time. And for you, how has it been for you learning about this subject and the reality that this subject is very real?
Well, it's been extremely surreal. I would say, just a little bit of history, like UFOs were something from my childhood, something I was into as a kid. And growing up, I kind of like left that in my childhood. And then ever since December 2017, I've just been floored wait, this is real? Like, this is happening? So it's been an extremely off-balanced experience as a journalist and someone who's interested in the topic, but also wants to be critical and be, journalistically accurate. It's been difficult because I think a lot of people are excited about this topic, and excitement can lead to embellishment. And so it's been like a quagmire a little bit. I think for me, someone in the weeds, when you look at journalism, people who get in the weeds and they're looking at documents and dates and names, it's been a bit of a quagmire, unbalanced and confusing.
Now, for you having the publication of the New York Times in going through with this, Stephen, I mean, what has been the reaction from your readers and your audience going through this, where you try and have a highly skeptical mind, but you have to tell the news that's there. The news is there could be a reality to this subject.
Right. Well, I'm at you said Times. I just want to make sure everyone knows.
New York Post. I apologize.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I release my UFO stories next to like celebrity gossip. So with the New York Post, it's been awesome. When I do a show called The Basement Office, and my whole pitch for the show is I wanted to do the anti-history channel. I just wanted two dudes sitting at a desk talking about the facts and evidence of UFOs. I didn't want anything like, crazy reenactments or just CGI UFOs or melodramatic music. And so I didn't know how people were going to react to that, but people have reacted super well. It was almost like now's the time to do that. Like it's been fun, but let's get real. There's this sense of let's get real now, And yeah, the readers, I mean, it's the most successful show the New York Post has, without a doubt. And so it's been awesome seeing that response, not knowing at first how they were going to respond.
Right. Ryan Recker, I want to bring you in here because we have you on a timeline here because this is pretty late night for you as well. But from KMOX standpoint in St. Louis, what has been the reaction to a lot of the UFO stuff that you have been covering? Because I know when you and I first started talking a couple of years ago, you were extremely skeptical of this entire topic. And I'm proud to say I get to tell you I told you so. But finally, the UFO nuts are winning, man. We're winning.
I think what we're seeing, and this is an important shift. So when you look at the way it's covered in a lot of mainstream news, and being KMOX, we have a pretty large newsroom, but we focus a lot of local. And what you find is that a lot of the information we get is from national sources, like, the AP is reporting this or that. So you're not really getting anything in depth. But what you do get is people talking about it in a way that's a lot different than what I remember when I was younger. When I was younger, if you talked about UFOs, it was sci-fi and it was tabloids. And, you're walking through and the National Enquirer has, look at the UFO baby or whatever it is. And I think that has changed dramatically over the last couple of years because I think people are very interested in seeing the footage. They're interested in looking at these things and coming to certain conclusions that it doesn't make sense. I think they're interested in learning the facts. They want to open up the government record books and they want to see what the government has documented. So they've moved away from this. It's funny and it's kind of like the last thing they put in the news, like with the skiing squirrel. They got rid of that, and now they're treating it legitimate because the government and everyone else is looking at it in a legitimate way because they want to know the answers too. I don't know if they have the answers. I don't know what they're going to release, but I think that when you start looking at these documents and what is going to be released, you're going to be able to read between the lines of some of these things, learn some more clues, and piece them together with the things that you already know, and you're going to be able to put a much better picture together than I think we've ever seen.
Right, and I agree with you. When you look in the newsroom and you walk in the newsroom of KMOX before you go on the air, is there a real air of discernment that the journalists now have to figure out how to cover this story? Because one of the things I've always professed, Ryan, is that journalism really dropped the ball on this because we always made fun of it. But now that it's here, do we really know how to cover this story?
Yeah, there's a lot of stories that were treated that way. I think in a world where you could disseminate information and there's going to be detractors, people that easily dismiss it without actually reading the story or without looking deeper into it. But I think that you found a lot more people are reading deeper into it, and a lot of very credible and large publications and, notable records are starting to really take notice of this sort of thing. Scientific journals, things like that. I think when you start getting that community together, and it really legitimizes it, and as opposed to people going on and easily dismissing it, they want to learn more. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing for people to learn more. And, it'd be better if we did that with all of our news. If we were to, in fact, go and learn a little bit more about everything else that's going on in the world, we'd be a better place. But I find that they're actually doing it with stories like this.
Absolutely. We bring in Marc Patrone from Sauga 960 Radio in Mississauga, Ontario. And Marc, you do a UFO show every Friday where you bring me in for about 20-30 minutes. This is a segment you've been doing on a Friday afternoon or Friday morning on your show for a number of years now. And what have you noticed in your audience as you've broached the UFO subject? Have they started taking it more seriously?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, absolutely. But I think I get emails saying, your segment is freaking me out. That's kind of a regular reaction. Whenever you're on, people are totally riveted to it. I know people are tuning in, listening carefully. It's just a great story. And I can remember first getting interested during the 90s when I was working on the east coast of Canada in Nova Scotia. The Shag Harbor incident was always something that was talked about. And also Stanton Friedman, of course, and you'll all know Stanton Friedman lived in New Brunswick, which is also in that same neck of the woods. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Stanton Friedman once for a story I was working on. And so I'd read some books on Roswell. To me, it's like such a fascinating story. I could never understand why people dismissed it. Reporters, it was always with a tongue-in-cheek approach with their reporting. But I suspect that they were fascinated, but they didn't want to look like they were fanboys or treating it too seriously. I think there was an expectation in newsrooms, oh, we're going to do a UFO story. Oh, boy, let's have a little bit of fun with that. But as time went on and some of the stuff started coming out from the military, and then, of course, 60 Minutes would do stories, and other reputable people would talk about it, then I think over the course of that time, people started treating it very seriously. And, of course, you had quite a few firsthand, reports of odd things that they had seen. And some of the documentaries that had come out, like even shows like Ancient Aliens, I don't know if you like the show or not, but that's been running for quite a few years. And it's so well done with the interviews, and obviously it's highly speculative, but I think that just some of the stuff on TV, it's just been constant, really interesting shows, programs, documentaries, some of the ongoing reports out of Roswell and other areas about what happened. And then, of course, the sense that you never weren't really quite sure what the media or what the military was saying. And I can even remember driving through Death Valley with a friend we were driving from Oceanside, California, where my friend bought a Cadillac. And, we were driving all the way to Canada in that thing, and going through Nevada and just knowing about, that area. So it's just a fascinating thing for me personally. And so that's why it's a lot of fun for me to cover it and to be on this panel tonight. Right.
Bruce Claggett, you and I have talked about this, and just to be upfront and blunt with our audience, you and I worked together in Vancouver in news radio. I was actually your best man at your wedding a number of years ago. And
you were.
And I'm so glad that you're here. You're now owner of a company called BFC Communications after, 30 years in the Vancouver radio business. For you on the west coast of Canada, what are you seeing about this subject? Is this being taken seriously, or is it something that is still, a mockumentary of news?
You know what, Dave, if you ask me that about 3 years,
Bruce, we're having some audio issues.
I would have given
We're having a little bit of audio issues with you.
Totally different
You were sticking
answer.
up there for a minute. Let me just put you on hold.
But now think.
I don't know why he was freezing up. My Canadian guys are freezing up here. But give me a second here.
Cold up here in Canada, even in the summer.
Bruce, we'll stick with you in a second. Michael Huntington, I want to. It's been a couple of years since we had you on Spaced Out Radio, and for you, what do you think of the topic right now? You're on mute, Mike. I'll get you to unmute there if you don't mind. Oh,
Okay.
There we go.
Is that me? Okay. Yeah, there's certainly a lot going on. There's pretty much a news story of some sort, be it social media or international media, pretty much every day. So it's undeniable that there's been a ratchet up, at least in the past, 4 years for this subject within mainstream media. That's undeniable, and the effect subsequent when you get mainstream media involved, you tend to get political entities involved as well. So that's pretty much what we're dealing with here. I think we're dealing with a campaign that has been worked on in a lot of ways by different elements of the UFO community, military intelligence, and people within the media have pushed this story forward to a point, perhaps to end stigma, perhaps to change policy, perhaps to promote certain ideas, maybe to disclose stuff. So I think that is most fascinating. The behind the scene things that maybe regular folks aren't aware of, as to how this came about, and it largely came about from UFO activists who were also tied to legitimate journalism.
All right, and thank you for that. Tim McMillan, the final one of our panel tonight that we're going to introduce. I mean, I'm surprised that you're getting any sleep this week, honestly. Do you even plan on sleeping with everything that's going on?
Yes, man, I'm sleeping well. It is interesting and exciting times, and it's nice, I think, in terms of the coverage last time, because I was just on your show like a month ago, wasn't I?
Yeah,
it wasn't that long ago.
It was only a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, and I told you at that point, a lot of the media coverage had reached to the point where it was almost toxic. At least my concern. I think I told you that our outlet had said, all right, let's slow down a little bit, because it had gotten breathless. Like it was. Then you saw outlets trying to compete with who could get something out first instead of who could get something out best, that type of stuff. So right now, I think what's interesting is it kind of slowed off, and now everybody's, on pins and needles, waiting to see if something's going to drop Friday. And like I told you last time, I don't know what to expect. The topic, if nothing else, is paranormal in that nothing behaves normally. So, I know I've said not to expect a whole lot from the report Friday, but then again, it'll drop Friday and they'll roll out the Roswell bodies or something. Like it's hard for me to predict. But it's been fun. It's interesting. It's interesting to be here right now. I think for me, years later, there's almost an imposter syndrome, because I got here as an investigator, as a cop who got into journalism because I thought I could investigate largely this topic. And so now to see it at this point, it's really interesting. It's very, very interesting.
I think it's interesting, too, because, Stephen, I want to bring you back in here for a couple of minutes, because we have a lot to talk about with you. We only have you until the top of the hour. The way this story is brewing, what are you expecting on June 25th? I mean, this is what everybody wants to know. This is what everybody's talking about. This is what we're all horny about in the UFO world. So for you, my friend, what are you excited about?
Oh, wow. What am I excited about? Let's see here. Well, let's just... I'm not too sure what the hell I'm excited about, but let's look at the clues that have been released so far with what the report's going to be. The report is, in many ways, going to be essentially Here's what we don't know. It's going to be like the Donald Rumsfeld thing. Here are the known knowns. Here are the known unknowns, and here are the unknown unknowns. That's what basically I think the report's going to be. You had the New York Times report, outlining how they're looking at 120 cases, how the majority of them are not U.S. tech. They're not ours, essentially, is the takeaway line. These aren't ours. That's interesting. And then you connect the dot to, okay, if they're not ours, they must be someone else's, Russia, China. If so, and if in fact these objects are behaving the way they're saying that they're behaving, 45,000 miles an hour, right-hand turns, trans-medium travel, and Russia and China is doing that, we're screwed, Okay, so if it's not that, then it's something else. And I'm hoping, what I'm excited about, to answer your question, is that they really address that something else, that they're really open to that something else possibility, and that they don't say, hey, give us some more time, we'll get back to you on the unknown unknowns.
See,
that's yeah.
See, that's what bugs me, is what are those unknown unknowns? Because to the UFO world, it's already going to be known. However, Stephen, when it comes, as we got about 3 minutes to go here before we go to break at the bottom of the hour, to the rest of the mainstream public, this is all fresh news.
Right. Yeah. To the layman, this is fresh news, and that's a good thing, because you obviously, this is information the public should know, that they need to know. If it's as drastic and as big a problem as is being said, obviously the public needs to be part of that conversation. But at the same time, it could be like trying to drink water from a fire hose. There's so much information there. There's so much backstory that, folks here on this panel who have been following this topic for years, in the weeds and everything, we can see little dots and connect them, and we're like, oh, okay, that, and oh, okay, this date and stuff. But to the general public, I could easily see people freaking out, just dropping in their lap, this brand new news that, hey, those sci-fi stories from the 90s, yeah, some of them are based on something that could have happened.
Well, let's bring in Ryan Recker. Ryan, when you look at this story, do you think the public is ready for aliens? Coming out of COVID, where we've treated each other like garbage, we've ripped toilet paper from children's hands in the store, we've pushed single mothers over trying to get a gallon of milk or a liter of milk up here in Canada. This is something that seeing how people have reacted during a pandemic, now you throw aliens potentially in there, or UFOs, and that we're not alone. As we got about 90 seconds, what's your opinion of that?
Well, actually, I thought in Canada you had bags of milk. Maybe I was under the wrong impression.
I haven't seen bags of milk in years, man, to be absolutely blunt.
What I'm interested in is the government's role. So what they decide to disclose, I think you'll get a bigger scope of exactly what the role of the government will be. And I think that you'll find, much like any other story that comes out, you can start to predict the way the government would take advantage of that. If there were a situation, how would other governments take advantage of that and use that in their own news cycle to get away with other things? So, for me, I'm more interested in seeing how the government plays into all of this and trying to get an honest answer from them.
Yeah, that's going to be the big thing, Ryan, is whether or not we get that answer, and we'll try and get everything suited up for that. But what do you expect? Do you expect an honest answer, Ryan?
I don't think you can. I think if they did know something, it's going to be tough, because you can't take their word that they know nothing, but you also can't take their word that they know something either, because maybe they don't. Maybe, who knows? To me, it's all a giant mystery still. I think what you're going to have to find is that what are those little pieces, those morsels, bit of information that you can take away from this that's new and different, and how does that compare to other things? And then you can start building your own assessments. And I think that's what you have to do until there's some sort of formal disclosure, which who knows if there will be one or ever will be one in the next, who knows how many years.
Well, on that note, gentlemen, I'm going to get you all to hold on right there, because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. A massive media panel here talking about the power of journalism when it comes to UFOs. From Vancouver, Bruce Claggett, Sauga 960, Marc Patrone, Tim McMillan from The Debrief, blogger Michael Huntington, Ryan Recker from KMOX in St. Louis, and the New York Post's Stephen Greenstreet. All right, gentlemen, we're clear. That's good stuff right there. It's good, solid first half hour. Claggett, we got to get you in
back?
here. Yeah, now you're back.
Sorry
Now
for-
you're,
Of course.
you know,
Yeah.
reminds me of the time
Sorry
I
for
interviewed.
sliding right in there on you, Dave.
Yeah.
The
right.
last minute,
Yeah. Well,
my normal appearance.
oh, that's all right. The main thing, I wasn't sure if you were getting up or not because I had messaged you. Before.
Dude, I told you text me Friday and remind me,
Oh,
and you text me last night, and I'm like, shit.
dude, I
Okay,
totally,
I got you.
I
I got
totally
you,
forgot.
fam.
Thanks,
Yeah.
buddy. I owe you one.
No. Anytime.
Yeah.
So I enjoy waking up at 5 a.m.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
That's
Boy.
for you though. Anytime.
The damn sarcasm right there. That one just right in the feels. Right in the feels. Yeah.
No, but it's fun to be here, man. It's fun to hang out.
Yeah, this is
In fact, I got to get with you, Stephen, because you're in my upcoming series, by the way.
Oh crap! No, wait, I am.
Yeah,
Awesome.
no, really. Yeah, you are.
That's
No,
rad.
our conversation about the Roswell wreckage and the
Oh yeah,
Mind
yeah.
alter-
That's
yeah,
great. That's cool.
that comes up.
Steve, Abe in our chat room is asking, when can we expect more Basement Office?
Yeah.
If all goes well, and that I mean that, if all goes well, Wednesday or Thursday this week.
Nice.
Cool.
I worked all weekend on something.
Good deal. Good deal. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Man, this is done. Bruce, what's going on?
Oh, you can hear me now, so life is better, right?
Oh yeah, typical radio, man. You froze up in the UFO crowd, much like I did when interviewing Gretzky the first time.
Well, you're just like Gretzky. In fact, if I kind of close my
Oh.
eyes, I can't see the difference, right?
I remember it was
No, it's all good.
It was 2006. I'd never interviewed Wayne Gretzky, and he was putting together Team Canada for the Touring Olympics, and they were trying out in Vancouver, and they were having a golf tournament there in one of the golf courses, and we're scrumming Gretzky, and I'm literally like 3 inches away from his right shoulder, and I wasn't prepared, and he turns and he looks at me, and my microphone's right there, and he turns and looks, and I'm like, oh God, what the hell do I say? Like, I totally blanked. I couldn't believe it. Totally blanked. It's terrible.
Dave,
Yeah, Mark.
I'm going to move to another room because I'm freezing, and I can hear you guys pretty well, but I'm going to try just a different location and see if this works. Just doing it on
All
my
right.
iPhone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not a problem, buddy. We got some time here.
All right.
All right. We got about 2 minutes, guys. 2 minutes. I want to say a big thank you to Chuck, to Raz Grizz up in Fort McMurray, to Abe, to Michael, and to Major Lee for the super chats. It's a great way to support what we do on the show on a nightly basis. Thank you so much for doing that. And you know what? We are going to make it into a great show tonight. So if you're brand new here, we are a live radio show, so make sure that you understand that that's why we are on commercial breaks, and you guys get to see the background of it all. Hey, little Davey Altman has joined our chat room tonight. Little Davey Altman. There he is, everyone. There he is. He likes a good wave, people. Doesn't like eye contact, but he likes a good wave. All right. We got about 45 seconds here. See if Marc is with us. Marc, are you with us now? Or are you still moving? Might be still moving.
Yeah, I had to send you that, Stephen, so that you had forewarning that I said you were like a Van Dyke Fox Mulder. So
he looks badass when he has his white shirt and the black tie on. Fuck, he should be on Reservoir Dogs.
That's actually maybe that's a better analogy of Van Dyke. Yeah,
you can use
hold
that.
on, I mean rewrite.
Yeah, you can use
we got
that.
time. We're still in edits, but yeah.
A Tarantino version of Fox Mulder.
Hold on,
there
guys.
you go.
We got 5 seconds here. Hold on. We're underway with the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with our media roundtable leading up to June 25th. We're going to get right into it right now. And Bruce Claggett, I want to bring you in from Vancouver here, and hopefully this time your audio is going to be good because your beard looks fantastic. I will say that. I know our radio audience can't see that, but the rest of us can. And Bruce, what has been the attitude around Canada's West Coast regarding this? Vancouver's a very aloof city where they seem to be a melting pot of beautiful people who are more self-absorbed than the rest of Canada. And I mean that with all due respect to my family and friends who live out there, but that's the reality of the city. Is there any attention, anybody talking UFOs in the West Coast? You got to turn your mic on, Bruce. All right. I had such a good question there, too. And do we got you now? No, we seem to have an audio. Oh, hold on. There we go. There we go. Try that now. Bruce, we got you.
Am I there yet?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. And just for the record, that was your fault, Dave.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
You know what? The thing is, for years, the news media, whether it's the West Coast or anywhere else in North America, used to be gods. And, you know, everything that somebody said, whether they're a radio or TV news anchor, used to be taken as the absolute gospel. Things have now changed, and we're living in a different environment. And, you know, you start talking about what's the news media doing in covering UFOs. Well, the question really should be shifted to what is out there in terms of the discussion on the different social media channels. What are people talking about? And is the news media following, leading? Where are they? And, you know, there is a discussion. There's a real curiosity. And people want to see evidence. They want to see pictures. And they want to have discourse. And that conversation better be reflected somewhere in the coverage and not relegated to your end of a newscast kicker. You know, where it has been for years. It's kind of like the elitist joke at the end of a newscast, right? And that doesn't hold water anymore because we just don't hold the media up to that same level of, wow, you whatever you say is truth.
Very true. Very true. Marc, are you noticing that in Mississauga as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always been a fascination about it, but as far as the media is concerned, you know, you have to be careful if you're a reporter. At least that's been the attitude, that if you go down that rabbit hole too much, then people think, you know, that they are more apt to lump you into that Fox Mulder kind of person. Oh yeah, he does. You know, he's on the UFO beat. You know, anytime we need one of those types of stories, we'll throw him in there. So I think reporters have a level of consternation around this. So I think far back as I can remember, they've always had that kind of wariness about it. And anchor people, very wary about it. It's always kind of half snickering when they do a story about this. But I think things have changed, and I think the coverage has changed. But it's largely due to the fact that some of the information coming out of sources like the military, like the government, that has changed. And that has changed. And as a result, the coverage has changed. Because when you start seeing stuff coming out of the military, out of the Pentagon, well, then the reporters have to treat it seriously. And so that has sort of given them, I think, the freedom to say, okay, well, this is a very reputable source. Hey, we got to treat this seriously. So I think that's what's happened.
Right on.
And you know what, Dave? I think Marc has got a good point, and I'd just like to echo some of that. For the longest time, we've always been kind of glued to this notion of, well, it's kind of like other news. But when you start to put some credibility behind it and you have some political mass in the States and who's talking about it, that's going to give it the certain sort of gravity where it takes off as an issue. And when it comes right down to what news is determinant, that hasn't changed. I mean, is it unusual? Yes. Is there some impact? You bet there is. Is it just plain interesting? Yeah. So you get enough of these different factors in there, that and the social media, and you're going to see UFOs taken seriously, I think.
Well, that'll depend if Canada up here actually finally discusses what they actually know. And Tim, I want to get a brief answer from you regarding this coming up here for the June 25th date. I mean, we're all pumped up for it. We're all excited for it, and we all joke that, it's going to be like we're expecting that remote control car as a kid under the Christmas tree from Santa Claus, but we're all expecting gray socks.
Sure. What's the question? What should we expect? Should we be disappointed? Is Santa going to give us coal? I don't know. It's like I said, it's hard for me to predict this topic. If nothing else, that's what I have found out over the years of covering it. I think that for a lot of people who have been following the UFO subject for years, and some people for decades, and are very well versed in it, they may be disappointed. Because it's not going to come out and say, directly what it could be. If it's not Russia, it's not China, it's not the U.S., what else could it be? I think if you kind of read through those lines, however, for me, in my understanding of what's going to be in it, it's extremely significant because, what's not going to be said is that, certain things like, let's just narrow it down to the 2015 events. Ryan Graves has spoken about the Roosevelt. He talked about these occurring every single day. So every single day they're having these returns. And this is still going on. For me, I look at that and see the United States and their allies have a significant number of assets at their disposal. And so either to zero right in on that. If you've got it every day, it's not going to be hard to kind of put your own surveillance reconnaissance assets in there. And so that's intriguing to me because it either means if they're coming out and saying, look, it's not ours, which I've felt strongly about that it wasn't U.S. tech, and we don't know whether it's China or Russia. That's significant because what they're not saying is either A, we just haven't cared enough to worry about unknown objects that are flying, within 10 miles of the coastline, or they have put significant assets on place and still don't know. And so that latter, I think, is interesting. And so if nothing else, I think from a media standpoint, I look at it as when they come out and say, yes, this is real, and we don't know, now it's appropriate for the mainstream and all of the, all of these Pentagon correspondents, all of these investigative journalists to start asking the question, well, what is it? For a long time, the question beforehand was, is it real? But now we need to be asking, what is it?
Yes, I was told that there's 3 phases to this. Is it real is number 1. Number 2 is what is it and where does it come from? And number 3 will be, Are there aliens? We're just not ready for number 3 yet. Stephen, I want to bring you in because we only have you until the top of the hour. Michael, I promise I'm not trying to ignore you here. I do promise that. But we have a long show here. But Stephen, for you and the way you're looking at this, come June 25th, when these announcements are made, are you expecting it to be delayed? Have your sources told you what may come out? Because I don't see little green men being talked about. I don't see aliens at all being mentioned in the topic, or even the history from Roswell up forward. Are you hearing anything different?
No, I don't think any of that's coming out on Friday at all. From what I understand, there's a small portion of the full report that is unclassified, that is available to the public. But there will be, obviously classified parts of this report that the public will not have open access to. We know, within the last few days, Congress was already briefed on this. So members of Congress have already started being briefed on the actual report. We're not getting aliens, man. I just don't see that happening at all, especially released to the public right off the bat. Lou Elizondo says, it took longer. It took 3 years for the 9/11 Commission. When 9/11 happened, which was a failure of U.S. intelligence, it took 3 years to create a report on 9/11. And if we're talking about another failure of intelligence, or at least a misunderstanding or a inability to understand intelligence, 180 days just isn't going to do it. Come on, 180 days, you're not going to be able to sum up everything. So I think they focused on, as the Times reported, 120 cases. They were hyper-focused, and we're going to get kind of a breakdown of what those are. It's already been leaked that the majority of those cases have been determined not to be ours, not to be U.S. tech. Now, can I just flip things a second?
Sure.
Because as a UFO, as someone who's followed UFOs since childhood, I read Stanton Friedman's Crash at Corona when I was a teenager. Consumed this stuff. UFOs are exciting. They're fun, right? It's fun to think about it. And with fun and entertainment, there's an escapism entertainment to it that, as a journalist, I try to rip out of me, and avoid. And I always try to ask myself, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? And think about this. What embarrasses the U.S. government more? What embarrasses the U.S. government more? What do they not want us to know more? One, that a technology that is light years above us, that is completely outside our comprehension, has been flying over U.S. airspace, or that our adversaries have been flying over U.S. airspace with abandon. Which makes them look really bad? And which would they go out of their way to try to control the conversation on how and what information comes out? If it is our adversaries, man, they're having their greatest luck in the world, because everyone's talking about aliens. No one's talking about China. No one's talking about Russia. If it is, in fact, some foreign tech, they got lucky.
Very true, very true. But the fact is, though, if you talk behind the scenes, and I think Tim, Stephen, and maybe Michael, you guys will agree with me on this, the people we talk to, they don't want to talk Russia. They don't want to talk about China. They already know, but they're just not ready to go public with it. And I think that's the danger of it all, because in order to get the money for funding, you have to say Russia, you have to say China. You can't say aliens. You can't say Zeta Reticuli or star bases on the moon or Mars. You can't say that. You're not going to get the money.
Sure. Well, and I think that at this point, and we may have discussed this last time we spoke, Dave, I think that's why it's incumbent upon reporters and journalists and experts who necessarily haven't covered this particular topic to step in and lend that expertise, especially when you're talking about, is it Russia or China, in the aspect of we don't see any evidence of that, not militarily, but in soft power. And by soft power, I mean that if China or Russia had this technology, there's much more. They would have much more significant influence, not using it as a weapon, but using it, commercializing it, and using it as a soft power play. And I've said, if China had the technology to travel at instantaneous hypersonic speeds or get you anywhere in the world in under 60 seconds or less, you commercialize that. Suddenly, the average public doesn't care if China wants to take Taiwan. They don't care if they want to control the whole East. They're like, hey, China's cool. Same thing with Russia. Oh, you want all of Eastern Europe? Great. That's a foreign policy type matters, or how you see governments position themselves. And so that's what'll be really interesting is whether, even if the government's not going to come out there and say that, it's incumbent upon these foreign policy experts to say it, because that is the truth. We don't see the evidence for that, not just in military matters, but in all the other matters that really influence the world.
Ryan, I want to go ahead, Stephen, and then I'll bring Ryan in.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that Tim just said we don't, see the evidence. And, when you really step back and look at what we really have seen, what's been leaked, what's been released, is it really otherworldly? When you look at the videos that have been released, when you look at the Navy the hazard reports that have been released via FOIA, are they really describing something otherworldly, something incredible? They're not. They're just not. They're describing, quote, quadcopter type drones. They're describing balloon type objects. They're describing things that are floating, that are just there. And we almost ran into it. And when you look at the videos, you're not seeing things zip at 15,000 miles an hour. You're not seeing things go into portals or interdimensional travel. So really, what do we have? What are we looking at? And what are these things? Well, according to the documentation, a lot of these things are quite terrestrial, and I think it's the media. It's the media that takes, the Navy saw a unidentified flying object, UFO, alien. They just run with it. And what gets lost are the actual facts, which is we need to hopefully weed through a lot of this stuff and realize that, in my opinion, guys, honestly, I'm convinced that there is a foreign adversary presence near U.S. borders. That a lot of these drone cases over Arizona, over infrastructure sites, over nuclear sites, over THAAD in Guam, the anti-ballistic missile sites, those were drones. A lot of these things could very well be spycraft. And when the U.S. government reveals that, when we start revealing what they are doing to us, we risk exposing what we are doing to them. We risk exposing what we're doing over there. So that's just something to keep in mind.
That's very much something to keep in mind. Ryan, we got about 6 minutes here before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. Ryan Recker from KMOX. When you listen to Tim and you listen to Stephen, and I know you're not a big UFO hot topic on KMOX, but the topic is coming up quite frequently here. When you look at what the public is going to go through and what we could or could not see, as an outsider observer to this on a mainstream sense, what do you want to see come out June 25th? Is it aliens? Is it history? What is it?
Yeah, it's really interesting to listen to this conversation, and I'm real fascinated by it because I think from a media standpoint, too often we find ourselves putting things online or just ripping and reading, and we try to phrase it in, here's why you should care about this, and we're just reiterating something that's from a copy that someone else already has, that's already been said a million different ways, and we're not giving it really a critical thought. But hearing some of the different conversations here tonight and some of the thoughts, I go back and I think about World War II, and I think about all the Nazi technology that the United States implemented in order to try to bolster and advance our own technology, and what that did to the NASA program, and how we looked at how that advanced afterwards, taking some of these engineers. And it's really amazing the way our technology changed when we were able to implement what other countries were doing. In fact, things that we didn't even think were possible. And is it really that far-fetched to believe that other countries may be more advanced than us, given everything that we know, that it's, just going back less than 100 years, it was like that. There was a lot of these unknowns that we didn't know. And if that's the case, then is it more embarrassing, or is it more inclined that the government would try to keep it quiet, or would they hope that maybe it being unexplained is the best case scenario for the United States, because then they don't have to come to the conclusion that we're outmatched in all the money and everything that the government has put into it. I mean, more than any other country by far. You can combine all the other big countries and what they spend in military and advancements and research and development, and look at that and say, how did we get outwitted by this? I mean, so it's either that, or they're hiding something so sophisticated that they don't want the rest of the world to find out. And that's another very interesting point, because when the cards start to go out on the table and it's your turn to show your cards, you don't want the other countries to know that you got, all the wild cards or whatever it may be. For me, I look at this and I think that there's a lot of critical ways to look at it. You can look at it from the government spending standpoint, and I think that'll interest a lot of people. Billions and billions of dollars, and what does it show if another country can outwit us in something like that? And I think, if anything, there's a lot of imaginations that people will wonder if it's not that, if it's something more pure or more unexplained. What does that open the possibilities up to? So, I love hearing these different stories. At least for me, it's a big government story. I don't look at it as a huge cover up. I look at it as a big exercise into the capabilities of government and what they're capable of doing when it comes to spending tax dollars, research, science, all of these different things. To me, that is a story that I think is going to get a lot of people interested.
I think so too, Ryan. But I mean, the key is that I see happening here is the public ready? And I think that's part of the entire narrative that we are seeing. And I want to get Steve's comment on this, because we only have a couple minutes left, Ryan. I will come back to you on this one. But Steve, is the narrative fair to the public?
Which narrative?
The narrative of the current narrative that they are going on right now, by not answering a lot of questions about the past, not
at all. No, 100% not.
Does the public realize?
I mean, I'm working on. I don't know, not at all, because that's a inside baseball story, and a lot of media doesn't run with the inside baseball story. They run with the headline, which is Pentagon says UFOs exist. That's it. They don't get into the weeds. Most media doesn't dive into the fact that the Pentagon has said their UFO program was not a UFO program. Who the hell reported that? But they said that. They said that. By the way, and they said this 2 years after the New York Times bombshell. They said, hey, by the way, ATIP, wasn't a UFO program. Nobody ran with that. Why? Because it's not sexy. And so you got to realize that, like, controlling information is power. When you release and surrender that information, you lose a sense of power. And the biggest military in the world and the biggest, most powerful country in the world isn't just going to do that because Trump signed some 180-day, bill back in December. They're not going to do it. And understand this, and I've learned this the hard way, is that every single word in everything that the government says is crafted. It's literally crafted. How are we going to say this? And words matter. Words matter. Every single word that's put into that is crafted. What they're doing now is crafting a report for the public. They're crafting it. They're going word by word. What can we say? Oh, you know what? If we said this word, we could get away with this down the line. Totally, 100%. I don't think it's fair at all. I mean, if we're talking about public information, the people being informed about what's going on, not at all. I've learned the hard way, and I think other folks, have learned this, that I'm not a fan of the Pentagon at all. I wanted to be, but I'm not at all.
They're really hurting it because of the narrative. Ryan, we got 40 seconds, and then we're going to go to break here at the top of the hour. The narrative. Do you feel the wool's being pulled over people's eyes?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we're not being told the full story. I think that's kind of the history of government and the way they communicate with the people. You don't really get the full story. So I don't think this story, among others, are any different.
And on that note, Michael Huntington, I promise you that in the next half hour, we're going to get your opinion, because we are going to go into the narrative of everything. We do have to say goodnight to the New York Post, Stephen's Greenstreet, when right after when we get to the top of the hour here. And Stephen, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really do appreciate it. I promise you we got to do this again.
Hell yeah, this was great. It was awesome.
I appreciate that. Let's take a look at our panel. Stephen Greenstreet from the New York Post, from KMOX in St. Louis. Ryan Recker, one of the top bloggers of everything paranormal supernatural in the United States. Michael Huntington from Vancouver, from BFC Communications. We have Bruce Claggett. Tim McMillan from The Debrief, and from Sauga 960, we have Marc Patrone. The narrative. Is it good, is it bad, or is it ugly, as we look forward to seeing what the U.S. government comes out with on June 25th on the SOR UFO Media Roundtable tonight. It continues with Hour 2 next. Good job, Steve. Good job. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, this was great.
Appreciate
cool.
it.
I'll come back on, man. This was great. I'll come back on. This is awesome.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. And we'll have to ship some coffee over to Tim, because poor guy. I feel horrible, Tim, that I didn't contact you.
No, dude, it's cool. No, and it is a fun panel. I agree with Stephen, and I really enjoy what you just last said. Both Ryan and Stephen was really interesting.
I'll be right back, guys.
For 2 points that I don't think kind of came up, but like you mentioned, Ryan, about the Nazi technologies that comes over, like the ability for another country, another government to have technology. It's really that aspect of it is very interesting. What Stephen just said, because I live in Germany now. Been here almost 2 years, and I'm a bit of a World War II buff. I don't write about it, but it's very fascinating in that what Stephen said, the idea that Nazi technology was hyper advanced, or that we needed Nazi scientists to achieve rocket technology, is largely a propaganda by the U.S. government, because they brought horrible people over here. But if you look at the history of it, like Tuskovsky, the Russian rocket scientist who died in 1935, he had already laid the foundation for rocket technology. Even Werner von Braun said that Jack Parsons of JPL was the real grandfather of rocketry. But the United States didn't need to develop ballistic missile systems, because they controlled air dominance. And in fact, if you look at the V1 and the V2s, they weren't nearly as sophisticated as you think. But there was this kind of mythization, because you brought a lot of really horrible people over here and kind of looked the other way. Werner von Braun, who became kind of the face of NASA and the rocket program, he was a card-carrying, ranking member of the Nazi Party. He absolutely was a Nazi, and before World War II ever started. And so it's fascinating, because like what Stephen just said, the ability to kind of rewrite history. I mean, this is what Russia does. This is what they do when they invade Ukraine. They rewrite history into making the Ukrainian people believe they're really Russian, down to the schools even. Like, this is what we teach you and everything. So it's fascinating. And I think you bring up a great point, Stephen, is that everybody, we'd be lying if we didn't say everybody has an agenda. And like you said, the government is not their agenda is not to make themselves look foolish or silly or give away information. So, yeah, it is important to kind of figure out what are they not talking about, or why do they want to display this and not that? Right.
Yeah. And essentially also, with Operation Paperclip, which brought the Nazis over to America, but that wasn't revealed. It wasn't like the Pentagon put out a press release after World War II. Hey, just FYI, I hope you're cool with it, public, but we're bringing Nazis to America. Didn't happen. They kept it on the wraps, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. You've got the Tuskegee experiments, MK Ultra. I mean, the government has done messed up stuff to the American public forever, and to think that they're all of a sudden like rad and cool and everything's different now. I mean, come on.
That's my point.
No.
That is the big point. That is the huge point right there.
Well,
All right, gents, I'm going to jump off real quick, okay?
All right,
All right,
Steve,
Steven.
thank
Take
you.
care, bro.
Take care,
Bye,
eh?
guys.
Yeah, there's definitely it's definitely ego dystonic because a lot of people on one hand are excited because of what the government's going to release in this report Friday. But at the same time, they believe that the government has covered up the UFO issue and lied for decades. You know, this is weird where suddenly they're going to be honest while admitting in the same time they haven't been. You know, that's why I'm real tempered on what to expect on Friday. Well, I don't know what they're going to say, but I'm not even certain that what they're going to say. Actually, I am just about as certain as you can get that whatever they're going to say is not going to be the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
The full report, the classified annex, is supposedly 78 pages. So it'll be interesting to see what the unclassified looks like.
12. And 9 of those are going to be redacted.
I was thinking 4. Because I've written reports like what they're doing. These intelligence reports and these. It's always very interesting. I always tell people that maybe a good idea beforehand is to go and look at some of the intelligence reports that have been produced, not on UFOs, but on other topics. The Jamal Kandashi one was the one the DNI just released not too long ago. It was like 3 pages.
Right.
And it really does. It's a lot of like, we believe this, or this is probably true. Intelligence is not science. And I can tell you, having been an intel analyst, it's not science. It's not journalism. It's a lot of like, we're pretty certain this, and we believe this. So even if that intel report said with a moderate degree of certainty we believe it's alien, that is far from fact. That is weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
Oh, very true. Very true. All right, guys, we have about 40 seconds. For our new listeners listening in, the reason why we're doing this, we are on live commercial right now for our radio affiliate, so that's why we are kind of taking a break right now from the main interview, and so a lot of people will wonder what's going on here. But Stephen Greenstreet also had to drop. We got Ryan Recker until the bottom of the hour here. Thank you to UFO Not, to Ken, Razgriz, Abe, Michael, and Major Lee for the super chats. It's a great way to support this show and what we do on a nightly basis. Here we go with hour number 2, everyone.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Cacology. Cacology is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as a clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with UFO media tonight leading up to June 25th. What will the Pentagon release to the public when it lets loose on its UFO files? Are we going to get the goods, or are we going to get a bunch of stories and ad hominem boring commentary and redacted papers? We're going to see. But one thing we do know is that there is a narrative happening, and we got a great panel tonight from Vancouver, from BFC Communications. We have Bruce Claggett. From the Debrief.org, Tim McMillan. From Sauga 960 AM in Mississauga, Ontario, Marc Patrone. From KMOX in St. Louis, we have Ryan Recker, and blogger and one of the top researchers and investigators in North America. We have Michael Huntington. Michael, I want to start with you on this one. You know, when it comes to the narrative of what we're going to get, what we're not going to get, the mainstream public, and the media for that matter, has not paid attention to this topic very closely. Everything that we've known for years in the field of ufology is brand new to them, brand spanking new. And I think that plays right into the government hands the way this has been played out. I mean, are people ready for the truth, or are they just ready to hear the government narrative because the government's the good guys right now in exposing this?
Quite a lot to take in there. We sort of have to separate ourselves as, UFO junkies, being on the inside and being bombarded with all this media constantly. We're inside of the bubble, so we're seeing all the activity that's been going on, from social media all the way up to, international media around this story, around potential disclosure, around the task force report. Is it going to be, a big disclosure, meaning is the government going to flat out say that, there's extraterrestrials or a craft from somewhere that we don't know, at least in some of these military cases that we looked at. There's a lot of people within the community that think that that's going to happen. Ultimately, what is going to happen and how it's going to be viewed from people outside of the UFO circles, it's going to come through the media, and it's going to probably get people's attention for a while, and it's certainly going to get politicians' attention for a while. And ultimately, there will be some sort of action. There will be, either a continuation of study, maybe by NASA or something, something organized along the scientific route. And there certainly will be some sort of push for military spending, perhaps in counter-drone activity or drone activity. There is a drone Cold War going on. So I think drone warfare, which I think, is a potentiality for some of these cases, or surveillance, that's going to be the selling point. That's where the, where the focus is going to be ultimately within the Department of Intelligence, or Department of Defense, and the intelligence organizations, and in the political realm. Outside of, the UFO world, I think it'll go along as a lot of these stories have over the decades. Little disclosures here and there. I mean, we've had military cases before with unidentifieds. We've had government investigations. We've had media blips over the past 70 years that have been used by military and media for a lot of different reasons. Largely the Cold War, sort of as a propaganda tool, I think, in a lot of ways. So you may see that sort of thing coming with this. Ultimately, it's not going to be fully satisfying for everybody, for anybody. The disclosurists want, they want the gates to open up at Area 51. They want the president to come out and give them a tour. And then, people that are more skeptical want to look at these cases individually and realize that there's probably, a lot of different things to look at with these aerial anomalies. And, maybe some of them are worthy of being looked at scientifically, or at least because it does affect the military as it's been, encroached. And I think that's what's going to happen with a lot with the report.
Right.
I would love aliens to come down, and space brothers come out of Venusian ships, but I don't think that sort of thing is going to happen. We're not going to see a big confirming event, and ufology goes on as it has in the past with this sort of, these government reports.
Bruce, I want to bring you in here on this because you've been a journalism instructor. You've been involved in the career of journalism for well over 3 decades now. And, here's one of my questions for you. The media always used to be about asking the tough questions, protecting the public, and getting that knowledge. Why are we, as the media, not asking the tough, pertinent questions when it comes to this subject? Is it because, A, we were caught with our pants down and don't know how to talk about this subject after decades of making fun of it? Or is it B, the fact that we are so understudied on this topic that we don't even know where to start with it?
Oh, it's probably B. You've got to look at the media. And when we talk about the media, we're talking the news media, the mainstream news media, your radio, your television, your newspapers. The reporters covering this are covering about 5 different stories this week, and of which this is one of the bigger ones. What's the headline going to be? How much time is going to be given to it? And what's the space? And then it's on to the next story. That's simply the reality of it. There really isn't a lot of time to ask questions. And in that, it is a bit lazy. It's also a corporate structure of how the media works. And you got to look and think, what's the headline going to be? What is a story going to look like? For example, if you turned on your radio and listened to the ABC News at the very top of the hour on Friday in a 35-second voicer, what possibly could you hear? And is it going to be something that would answer a dozen questions that you might have? And the answer is you're not going to get that. You're going to get the headline and about this much depth. If you go into maybe USA Today or a newspaper, you might have a 3-minute read on it. Are you going to get more? Maybe a little bit more. Is it going to get that much information, or are you still reflecting the headline with a couple quotes? And that's what you're going to see on Friday. I don't think it's government reports are terribly boring, even on interesting subjects. That's the nature of it. And reporters will gather around and try for the most exciting thing going. And if this discussion tonight is any indication, they're going to be thinking, it's just not there. We're not going to get what we want to really have that exciting story.
Are any of you on the panel surprised that this release of these documents are happening on a Friday afternoon? Because I know from working in a newsroom, if the government really didn't want to talk about anything, they would wait until a Friday afternoon to release certain subjects that they didn't want to talk about. That way they had the weekend in order to formulate their answers to any questions that the media may ask. Ryan, I want to start with you on this one. Are you surprised?
Dave, could I just interrupt for a second?
Please do.
Very popular misconception, and you're right. People talk about a news dump on a Friday afternoon and it not having to play, the work week is about to end, and it simply is not true. In fact, I would recommend to my clients, if you want to release news and get a lot of play out of it, release it on a Friday night, release it late on a Friday. You're going to have it held over and talked about more when resources are lowering. There's less news on the Saturday and the Sunday. It's going to have a greater shelf life. It's going to get more play. It's going to get talk show play, which it won't get on any other day. That is exactly the time you want to actually release something. And that's a different mode of thinking. And it's something that, my own clients, I have to say, that's a thinking you better get used to. The other is a misconception.
Okay, Ryan, your thoughts?
I'll play into the misconception, I guess. But, I think about the resources and the audience on the weekend are definitely a lot lower than any other day part that would be normal during the week. And I think even if you look at like cable news ratings, you definitely have a considerable drop in viewership over the weekend. So putting some news out on a Friday night, I think buys perhaps time for a bigger story to come about. So it doesn't mean that it won't get reported. I mean, it'll get reported. I think there's a chance that less eyes may see it if a bigger story comes around, because there always could be a bigger scandal or something else that drops. Like, let's say on Sunday morning during one of the news programs, there's someone says something sensational, and that could take over the news cycle. So I think that it may set the stage for things in the future. But I do think on Friday night, generally speaking, that's the time a lot of things get brushed under the rug there for a little bit.
Marc Patrone or Tim, you want to hop in?
Yeah, no, I just want to hop in from the government perspective side, because that's where the bulk of my background is, and so I understand why, and we would strategically place things where you drop it late Friday evening for communication strategy. But like Ryan mentioned, typically most outlets and even your local news affiliates, they have their weekend anchors, their weekend crews on. It's usually the B team. No offense to anybody. That's usually where people have to cut their teeth before they move into that Monday through Friday slot. Like our outlet doesn't even publish on the weekends. And so we would cut stuff loose, and the Pentagon does. You'll see the Friday dumps, and covering the DoD for years. They dump stuff at, around 4:45 p.m. Eastern on Friday. And the reason for that is it gives you the weekend to you've always strategized what your response is going to be. You've tried to anticipate what questions are going to be asked. However, especially in today's day and age where you have Twitter, you have social media, giving you those 2 days of lag time where you can monitor the social sentiment, you can monitor what's being said, you can identify questions that maybe you haven't anticipated, and typically you don't have your A team on. So you're not worrying about them digging into too much, but you can anticipate how you're going to respond to that. So I think for that side of it, I would at least hope that the government has some information strategy. It's not just wayward dumping it out there.
Marc Patrone, you've heard all the guys speak about this. Friday afternoon, that's when they're releasing it. Bruce says it's a great thing to do. Very rarely will I disagree with Bruce because him and I seem to have the same pattern on everything. But for you, with your experience working in Toronto and major markets, is this a buried time, or is this something where it's going to get a lot of traction over the weekend?
I think my mic is muted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
All right. I mean, back in the days when people were reading newspapers, then I guess it would be the big Saturday story, right? It would be potentially a front page story. So people would have some time on the weekend to look at the news, and, you'd get the big fat copy of your Toronto Star back in the day, and you could see on the cover what the story was. So then you could read it, without having to go to work. And then you'd also get the Sunday papers, right? But it's absolutely true that there are fewer people maybe watching newscasts on Saturdays and Sundays. But what you do have from the broadcast end is on Mondays, well, they got to look at the weekend papers and they go, all right, well, the breaking story element of it is dead and gone, but the analysis period starts, the follow-ups, right? So by Monday, you're starting, okay, well, these were the documents. This is what was said, the initial reaction. Now we got to go after the people to find out, what they're going to do about it. So you have these documents, and then you probe to see whether or not there's any credibility behind it. So then you get your talk show circuit, radio circuit. So there is a certain amount, I think, you could make the argument that, yeah, you're going to get some play there, but you're going to get some play not from the breaking story element, at least from my vantage point, because it's dusty. Let's face it, it's Monday. This was a Friday story, so you want fresh and new. But what you will have is once your A team does come on stream, you say, all right, here's what happened on Friday. You got to advance. Give me the advancer. What's the advancer today? Well, the advancer is that the government is lying. The advancer is that the UFO community is not happy because they didn't get enough. There was just not enough meat on the bones. Or maybe there was a nugget in there that demands further inquiry. So that's what you're getting starting from Monday forward. So I'm talking in terms of a reporter.
Bruce.
Here's part of the reality. Yeah, and it's borne out by, if you take a look at ratings patterns, which have changed for broadcast in the United States and in Canada. It used to be in radio, your peak time would be Monday to Friday, 8 o'clock in the morning would be your peak audience. Television would be 6 o'clock Monday to Friday. That no longer exists, and it's not a pattern that actually is reflected right through until a weekend. In fact, your weekend listenership for radio and viewership for TV is gone up a lot proportionately because people's patterns of work changed. And it's going to be even more so that way. We're not same commuting audience we used to be. At the same time, you have fewer people working in news and fewer newscasts and fewer resources. And anyone that works in a newsroom on a Saturday or Sunday knows you're grasping for news. You want to find something because, it may be, but I'm going to keep it longer. So something that's released on a Friday now, and if you listen to or watch TV news, a Friday night story ends up being a Saturday story and a Sunday story. If you release it on a Thursday at noon, it's gone by Friday morning. and the audience impact just isn't there.
Yeah, you get Meet the Press on the Sundays, right? So you get those guys sort of doing the chat, where the reporters get together and the analysis begins on the Sunday morning. So anybody who's watching television, over breakfast on the weekend on Sunday, they will also get that. So, in a way, I think Bruce does have a point.
Michael,
can I say something real quick? Yeah, that's mainstream news. Like Meet the Press. 60 Minutes. These sort of high-profile mainstream stories is what is sort of driving the story in a lot of ways. To kind of put things into perspective, though, what was the 60 Minutes viewership a few weeks ago? Maybe like 8 million at the most. Where at the same time you have YouTube channels that are related to UFOs that actually far outdo that, by tens of millions. So ultimately, within the groups of viewership that actually are interested in this and invested in this, maybe outside of the mainstream in a lot of way, within social media, regardless of what happens, they're going to be all over it, and it's going to be nonstop, at least for the next few weeks, especially as we get into, potentially one of those hundreds of cases that, need deeper analysis. Hopefully we'll get some evidence to go along with that in the form of pictures or videos or other testimony. I think that'll go a long way towards perpetuating this story, which is what I think a lot of UAP activists are wanting to do, is to continue to perpetuate it, get these occasional hits within the mainstream media in order to propel, political action, eventually in the form of some sort of a hearing, and eventually in the form of some sort of long-term investigation. And so you're going to see a lot of people sharing these stories, creating YouTube, creating content, numbers that will far outpace anything within, Sunday news programs.
Ryan, we have you for another 3 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. Ryan Recker from KMOX Radio in St. Louis, Missouri. What would you want for your audience to know about coming out on Friday?
I think having the conversation is a big part of it, because I think people are curious, and sometimes they don't want to, they don't necessarily want to read a government report. They want to be able to talk to people who are passionate about that. So when it comes to this report, I think what I'm interested in, and I think what my type of listeners would be interested in, is to find that thing that is not being reported and have us discuss it in a way that makes it eye-opening for them. So it's, as opposed to reading the first two lines of an AP copy that everyone has access to, or an article, it's being able to talk to someone and say, why is this significant or important? Or what does this relate to from what you've seen in the past? Or what isn't being said here? And I think being able to ask these sort of questions and have that discussion over a period of time, that's not just 4 lines in a news story or a quick reader or whatever that would come out in a newscast, is really what I think listeners want. But there has to be something there for it to report. So if the report comes out and there's really, you look at it and you say, well, I mean, it's a lot of redacted information, and there might be a couple of things here that are interesting. And, you think they might be satisfied with just a few words of, the report came out and we don't know how to look at this. And that's where people are going to leave it. But unfortunately, when you leave it at that, it doesn't advance the story. I do think people do want this to advance.
Ryan, what are you going to say to your audience if all of a sudden, a 72-page report that goes to the Senate Intelligence Committee that ends up being, say 4 to 10 pages for the public, which is also heavily redacted? What do you say to your audience looking at that?
Say that. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. So,
the real report, as Tim said, is going to be what, 72 pages, 78 pages, something like that, Tim? Okay. And
78 pages.
And let's say the public, out of that report, gets 10 pages with a lot of that redacted. We got about 45 seconds with you, Ryan. How are you going to react to your audience if all that comes out is a bunch of, blacked out copy?
Okay. I think that the next step is to try to talk to some of those different senators, whoever may be passionate about it. Like, let's say Marco Rubio is passionate about it, or people that are part of these committees, and really pressure them to try to redact as much as possible for the best interest of the American people and the taxpayers. You have to really push the politicians to say, you have this information, it is relevant, it is necessary for us to look at it. You have to release it. So make it a point to try to make sure they know you want to see that information. I think that's the message that would have to come from that.
Right on. Ryan Recker, I want to say a big thank you from KMOX and you spending some time with us. I look forward to talking to you about this subject as well, because I know you're going to be looking forward to it as well and probably covering it in St. Louis. Really appreciate you coming on, my friend.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. We'll see you.
Really appreciate it. We're going to continue on with the panel here. Blogger, researcher, writer, Michael Huntington. We got Bruce Claggett from BFC Communications in Vancouver, Tim McMillan from thedebrief.org, and from Sauga 960, we have Marc Patrone. We're going to continue on Spaced Out Radio right after this. So far, I think this has been pretty solid. This is good stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Dave, I'm thoroughly impressed with all the interactions you get here. Just reading some of the comments on YouTube, it is very impressive.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. We worked hard for that. You know, honestly, I say this all the time, but we have a very brilliant audience. We really do have a brilliant audience, and except for Fap and Vinny, you know, those two are my, I'm Dave, and those are my two brothers, Daryl and Daryl. Right? No, honestly, they're great guys, and we have an incredible audience, an incredible loyal audience, and when you got people that smart in your chat room, they always make you step it up every night.
Well, I'm glad that you asked me to do this because I'm probably the least knowledgeable of anyone you invited here, but it is fun to discuss and look at it from this level.
Well, you know what? I wanted you here because you have a very important job, and a lot of people listen to your voice. And you've done me a lot of favors in bringing me on your show over the years, and I wanted to get you on here and kind of show you what we do too. So thank you for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're always great. As evidence here with everything you put together tonight. Fantastic show, Dave. And it was very nice to meet you all. And this was real fun to be a part of. So thank you, guys.
You know what, Ryan? I think the most impressive thing was watching you scribble notes on this subject right through the entire show.
I know. I was taking all kinds of notes. Well, just when someone said something, I tried to write down if I had a thought, because what happens is it goes in and out quickly if you don't write it down.
I know that feeling. So far, Will with the best comment. I'm just here for Dave's beard. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I get that.
Yeah. All right, Ryan. Take care, okay? Thank you.
Thanks,
We'll talk soon, okay?
Take care.
Thanks. It was good meeting you, Ryan. Take care.
Appreciate it. He's a good dude. All right.
Yeah.
Tim, what's with your scruff? Is that you like going into the playoffs here of UFOs? You got to grow the beard or what?
Well, you remember, I'm trying to remember if last time we spoke, did I have the long beard? You know, I had the Dave Scott beard as best that I could possibly grow.
Oh, fuck.
And I cut it off, and now I'm going with the, I don't know what you would call this.
I don't know. You're looking damn sexy, though. I'm not going to lie. Damn sexy.
Thank you.
Damn sexy.
I appreciate that, Dave. Yeah, I am impressed because all of your viewership and comments seem to be pretty good, man. Like you have a good listener base. Typically, I always tell our people at the debrief, like, don't ever read the comments. Don't ever, just don't do it. Don't do it. Usually it's horrible.
Oh, you know what though? I'll tell you the reason. And I don't mean to sound like a jerk here when I say this, but my chat room isn't a democracy. It's a Davocracy.
I got you.
And
hey,
it's amazing if you keep politics out and you keep people like, hey, I love snark. Snark me all you want. But the minute you get personal with me, or you get personal with a guest, or personal with somebody in the chat room, that's where it crosses the line. And the people in here are amazing at policing themselves. And, you know, it saves me a lot of trouble, man. A lot of trouble.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that is good. Yeah, because usually, like I said, people will get on and say horrible things, like you said. Yeah. It's funny that even I just listened to Joe Rogan and Dave Chappelle not long ago, and they were talking about that. And so it's funny. I think people think even big time famous stars are impervious to people saying nasty stuff, but it's like, damn,
true.
Dude, come on, man. What
true.
the fuck?
Well, I like to tell UFO people, when it's time to be serious, be serious. The rest of the time, just realize it's just UFOs. I mean, it's not. There's no reason to have a jihad. We actually all have the same disease. We're UFO junkies.
Sure. So it's
true.
Not a topic. It's not warfare. It's not a topic that's life or death, and so you're allowed to have fun in it. It can be hugely significant, but it can still be fun. And so I agree.
Very true.
100%, Michael.
Very true. We got 20 seconds, guys, to answer Aussie Ange's question. Am I in a mood tonight? No, I'm just being around my fellow journalists. I decided to actually act a little professional tonight. That's pretty much it. I can't be the shithead I normally am. All right, so I apologize, but I love you all, especially you, Ange, in Australia. Here we go, everyone, with the next half hour. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with our media panel tonight talking UFOs, June 25th. What is happening? And we have from Sauga 960 AM in Mississauga, Ontario, Marc Patrone. We have blogger, researcher, paranormal dweller in everything under the paranormal banner, Michael Huntington. From thedebrief.org, Tim McMillan and Bruce Claggett from BFC Consulting and Communications out of Vancouver. And gentlemen, I want to kind of get into this. One of the things that we have looked into with this subject, Tim, is that this isn't an American subject. We keep looking at it as an American subject, that we need the President of the United States to stand up at that podium and say, my fellow Americans, we are not alone in this universe. But this is a topic that is going to affect everybody, not only in the United States, but around the world. And yet we see countries, and we'll get into it with Bruce and Marc momentarily, Tim, but, you and I have talked about this previously, mostly private, but we see countries like Canada who are absolutely not jumping on the bandwagon as an ally to support the American effort in kind of talking about this story. This subject really is a non-issue when it comes to asking the Canadian government what is going on. So for you, when you look at this story, you're over in Germany, you're covering it for the United States, yet you're covering it as a world topic. Where does this stand in the coverage right now?
Well, no, you bring up a great point, and I think that if UFOs adhere to geographical boundaries, then we can pretty much conclusively say, logic would say that means it's a terrestrial thing. However, in looking at that was one of the things when I came to Europe that I wanted to pay attention to. What is going on elsewhere in the world? Because if it's just happening in the United States, then we can narrow it down. It either is the U.S. or somebody who would be interested in what the U.S. is doing. But I think in terms of the coverage globally, it definitely hasn't trickled out as much as it has, especially in Western countries. I mean, the UK is just now kind of jumping on. There has been some good coverage out of Canada. We reported on it a week or so ago that China came out and not only said that they had their own UAP task force, but they had it for several years. And talking to some of the out of the reporting out of China, talking to some people in China, they're claiming it to be fairly sophisticated. But the question, lies, well, what does Russia think? Everybody says it could be Chinese or Russian. Well, what is Russia saying? I asked the Kremlin, they didn't tell me. So unfortunately, but it's interesting because there's still this weird suspiciousness. And that was when, in speaking to China about their UAP task force, it was the same sentiment where, it could be U.S. though. You got the United States saying it could be China, China saying it could be U.S. I think everybody. It's going to take one of these weird Spider-Man memes where everybody's pointing at each other and saying it's you, it's you, it's you, until everybody says, okay, wait, no, it's really not you. No, it's not you. I think if you're able to achieve that, that's one of the things I would like to see wholeheartedly. Because if it's not something that does have a very easily or prosaic explainable definition, then I think it is one of these interesting topics, kind of like space exploration, where we can work together. Even normal adversaries. You see that with Russia and the United States. They talk a lot of trash. They hack each other's stuff. They do all sorts of things to each other. But if you look at the Russian and U.S. space programs, they work together very, very well. But I have not seen, that was a long way of getting around to, I think, your question. I have not seen the same level of interest take off here in Germany by far, or anywhere else other than probably the UK, a little bit in Australia. A lot of kind of propaganda, state-run stuff out of Russia.
All right, Michael, I want to get your opinion on this because, we have a lot of people who are saying that the only way they'll believe it is maybe if the president of the United States comes out and says we are not alone. Do you think that's needed at this point, or do we continue on? Because realistically, even though we're not supposed to trust anything the government says, when it comes to UFOs, apparently we'll want to trust them until, the sun meets the darkness on the other side of the moon.
Well, trusting the government as to, what they say about a lot of different things, especially, with regards to, science, it's kind of, if you choose to believe them, I guess you choose to believe them. It may take the president of the United States to come out in order to get people to, accept, the narrative that there's, some sort of extraterrestrial visitation within all of these cases, at least in some instances. If the government knows that, and this is the old classic disclosure, narrative, that the government knows it, the government has evidence, probably ships and alien bodies. And if they have those things, then, that's what they want. They want that stuff to be revealed. Or if they're in contact with them, they want some sort of big confirmation event. There are some people that are actually anticipating that, when this report comes out, there will actually also be some sort of reaction by the phenomenon, as some people like to say, that there will be some sort of display. Some people are actually anticipating, some sort of visitation to, be coupled with this. There's a lot of different views as to, what disclosure entails. Even if you give everybody everything, some people will say it's a false flag, or some sort of op. So whatever comes out is not going to be fully trusted. And, over the course of looking at, history and politics and military and military intelligence, there's reasons why, there's a long history. I did meet with Lou Elizondo on one occasion. I talked to him for a while, and I told him that, first off, as somebody who's been involved in this subject for 40 years, I can tell you that there's a lot of people, especially old guard people, who are not going to trust you because you're military intelligence. And every organization over the past 70 years has been infiltrated and influenced by military intelligence relative to this subject. So, That's why some people get frustrated with a lot of the exopolitical, machinations and the spy stuff, and secret reports and secret groups and cabals and all that, because, it's been around in one form or another, for the better part of a half century now. And ultimately, we need to get down to, okay, we need some evidence of a phenomena. We need evidence of a visitation. We need that stuff to be put forward. It's not going to come by, a government file or a government proclamation. It's going to come by, something that's going to verify whatever needs to be verified. And I think largely what we're dealing with is probably a lot of different phenomena at play. So, there's going to have to be some science done if it hasn't already been done.
Bruce Claggett, I want to bring you in here because we have heard Canadian media going and talking about this subject, about the videos in the United States, about what the United States Navy is seeing. We've heard CTV reporters talk to Lou Elizondo, talk to Chris Mellon about this topic. But the one thing that I find very, very curious as the closest ally to the United States in Canada is that not once have we seen a mainstream reporter ask Prime Minister Trudeau or ask Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan or any other politicians about what Canada's role is in this subject, and do we have a UFO problem here? It hasn't been asked. Every question that has been asked has been directed towards the United States, and nothing about drilling our own politicians about whether or not it's happening here. Why is that the case?
I'd take some research on the part of a reporter to find out actually who to ask, who's been involved, who's been briefed, who's up to speed. And not everybody will be, even if it is falls under the domain of their file. I just don't. I don't see Trudeau being briefed on this, and I mean, even when it comes to things that he's closer to that are making headlines, he's not briefed on them necessarily. So it depends on what comes out. For me, the bigger question is after Friday, when you start to see maybe some answers or something that's kind of like, oh, really? Then the Canadian media may be in there asking better questions. What did you know and when? What was our involvement in the in working together with our American counterparts? We're all dealing with the same geography, the same sort of flight paths, the same space. So what was our involvement? What did we know? How many resources were put toward it? And did you cover anything up? And if the answer is, did you? The next part is why. But I just don't see anybody in the media really at that level yet to do or spend the time having done the research yet. There isn't that, Dave, you're right. There isn't that sense of real interest at this point, except for those who closely follow what's going on.
I understand that. But a couple of weeks ago, CTV's Washington Bureau reporter had Christopher Mellon on for 14 and a half minutes, an exclusive for 14 and a half minutes. And not once did she ask a single question asking about, does this happen in Canada? That's all she needed to ask. Does this happen in Canada? And she couldn't even ask that question. Like, I don't care how seasoned you are, you can't be that stupid. I'm not trying to be insultive, but you can't be that stupid in not asking that question. If you're a Canadian reporter asking a U.S. UFO guy and you don't ask that person about your own country.
Well, I'm not here to defend anybody's question list or what they ended up doing. My questions are along the same lines as yours, Dave. I would certainly think if you're in the States, it's not your country, but you're down there covering a story that's coming out of Washington, that you have a vested interest in looking for the Canadian angle. Or is there a Canadian angle? And going down that path. So that would be my line of interest there. That's why you are there. Otherwise, why not just simply run American reports for an American audience? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Tim.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, and just to put it in perspective, is, and I think what you're seeing is a larger problem that we see in defense reporting in general, and it relates to the fact that at the end of the day, the United States, they have more foreign deployed, they have more forward bases, so bases outside the United States than any other civilization in all of human history. They have more people deployed. If you look at it in terms of like Canada's Air Force, there's about 14,000 active duty personnel compared to the United States has about 350,000. Here in Germany, there are more U.S. planes permanently based here than there are Luftwaffe planes or aircraft in the entire German Air Force. And so what you're seeing in terms of just more broadly outside of just UFOs is people are accustomed to or are defaulting to the U.S. is just the big military brother. Like they handle all of that to an extent. And so it's, how's the U.S., what's the U.S. is kind of taking the lead. They depend on that for, a defense perspective. And it's hard for people, I think, especially in reporting, because that's how you're accustomed to reporting on defense matters. It's hard to separate that and realize, but this isn't a traditional defense issue. And, if this isn't a foreign adversary, it's not adhering to traditional defense matters. And so it doesn't care whether it's over Canadian airspace, German, Russian, U.S., it doesn't matter. And I agree exactly with what you're saying here, wholeheartedly. Because it is an international matter. And so that kind of propensity to just default to the United States when it comes to defense matters, you lose your voice in that. And I think that's probably one of the things that frustrates you is you're losing your voice to it, because is the United States doing enough to answer any questions about incursions or issues that are going on in Canadian airspace? And I think if you're going to be the United States and you're going to be this world military power and you're going to have more aircraft in Germany than Germany has itself, then I think you have to be open to answering that for those countries and for those citizens. Or wholeheartedly, I think I agree with you 100%. I think that the different foreign journalists need to kind of break away from that default to the United States on all defense matters.
Well, here I'm going to drop a couple of bombs here that I have tried to talk to other journalists about in this country, and none of them have jumped on the story. I'm talking about 10 different journalists. Bruce, you and I had some private conversations about this. Number one, and I've never even said this on the show, I know for a fact that Canada's ambassador was briefed by Lou Elizondo's successor. I've been told that by two different sources, including a source within the Canadian government. And that is huge, because our ambassador to the U.S. needs to be able to go and debrief both the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense. So that's why I think Justin Trudeau has actually been read in on this subject. But number two, going back a couple of years ago, I had sent an email to Paul Hellyer, where Paul Hellyer has actually told me that there is a private group in Canada that is looking into UFOs. And as far as he knows, they have been in actual contact. Now, I realize Paul's 96 years old, okay, but he's still smart as a whip, still on Canada's Privy Council. If that means anything, it gets him a nice retirement paycheck, that's for sure. But the point in that email that was very impressive to me that I've been sitting on is the fact that he said that there is a group that is there. And Tim, I believe I talked to you about that when it came out, because I wrote about that Paul Hellyer portion of the story that didn't get much traction. But having those two pieces, you think anybody in the Canadian media would maybe want to jump on that, and they haven't.
Sure. Well, and I'm fairly certain I've reported it, and I know I've said it before, and I have no problem saying it again, is that much like what you just said, I can say, for a fact that all of the Five Eyes network, so Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, have been briefed. Data has been shared with them. Imagery data, analysis reports, the whole 9 yards. So that has happened. 100%. I've spoken to people in some of those countries outside of the U.S. who received those briefings. So you're absolutely right. I mean, there is some. I don't know how much data sharing. I mean, that's the thing, is that I don't know what all the I don't know the classification policies in other countries. I do know the U.S., and so you have not for foreign dissemination. So even your allies, you don't disseminate. But this is, to the best of my knowledge, the majority of this has not been treated that way. So it is, I would say, I understand your frustration, because I believe there's probably a treasure trove of information that has been shared, bilaterally. It's gone back and forth. It's just not being uncorked.
Dave, the one thing you have to remember is Trudeau is not a commander-in-chief, and anything that is a military file or comes through the ambassador's office will go directly to the PMO, and then they decide who and to what degree it is read in. I don't know. Maybe he is fully read it and engaged, but maybe he isn't. I don't know. I have no idea. But what I would love to know, and it still gets right down to that questioning that you talk about, there's nothing stopping a reporter in a news conference in a hallway from asking, Mr. Prime Minister, have you been briefed in, and lay out the file, lay out what you know, and ask him, and don't let up.
Well, you know what? He probably won't know what's going on until he has the socks for it. I will say that. He's very
and let's not think for a second that the President Biden has spoken on it. Really, I mean, and to my knowledge, he's only been asked directly once, and he made, I assume, a joke. I don't even know what it means when someone asked him about President Obama mentioning that these things do occur, and he said, ask him again, and then walked off. Like, I don't know what that means. And so it's definitely, I just want to make sure the Department of Defense in the United States and a lot of former officials seem to be talking about it. But even the United States president has not, and at one instance, treated it like it's a serious issue. His attitude is not matched to the Department of Defense's, and which is kind of astounding, because if they're coming out and saying, which they already have said, there's events going on near our borders that we don't understand, we don't know what's going on. It's more remarkable to me that even if people believe these are foreign adversaries, that's kind of concerning. I'm surprised that people aren't saying, what do you mean this is going on? Do you not care? And that's what's interesting about when the word UFO gets brought up, or this topic. I go back to when Marc Warner, who hasn't spoken much, but he's the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, who requested this report. He did do an interview about a month or so ago, and he signed off on that interview saying, I think it's probably foreign adversary. Ha ha ha. And he laughed, and that was it. And in my mind, I'm thinking, as a reporter or as anybody else, why are you not stopping going, well, wait a minute. You think it's a foreign adversary? You're the chairman of the damn Intelligence Committee. Are you going to tell me that you think
that's your cue? And that's why you have to listen and think.
Right. Yeah. You're like, what do you mean? Why is this not a bigger deal? Why are you laughing? It's like, hey, I think there's a suspicious package outside. Oh, don't worry. It's a bomb. Let's go about our day. That doesn't match. And so little things like that, like holding them feet to the fire and saying, wait a minute, if you truly believe that, why are you not making a bigger deal out of it? My answer to that would be that they don't. Maybe I'm naive, but if they really believe that this there was a potential, another 9/11 or Pearl Harbor type event could be lurking, I would hope and pray that they would treat it a little differently than it's probably just terrorist. All right, have a good day.
And that's a danger, Mike. I mean, are any of us allowed to speak on this, Mike? Like the Prime Minister of Canada, the President of the United States, as far as you know?
Well, I think between Canada and the United States as being partners in NATO, there's probably, certain rules and regulations that, they have to consult each other, I guess, before they would reveal, any sort of national defense secrets that could affect both of them. I don't know. I'd be interested to know what the Biden administration has been briefed on. relative to this, and if any of his national security advisors have brought this up as something that's going to have to be, because if there's a disclosure event that's going to happen, which I don't think it's likely, you would anticipate that sort of thing, interaction between, different governments. I don't think there's been that as far as anything that I've heard. I mean, even, within the rumor mill, there hasn't been that sort of thing. So my guess is this report's going to be pretty much a self-contained sort of thing. It's not really going to answer, the big questions or give people, the answers that they think or want or anticipate. How it gets played out between, the different countries, I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
My friends, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. Tim McMillan, Bruce Claggett, Michael Huntington. Somewhere out there is Marc Patrone, who lost signal. I think they're having a weather pattern out there in Mississauga, and he's lost signal. He's trying to get back in. The UFO Media Roundtable continues. The panel, very strong tonight. One you're going to want to listen to on the replays as well. Hour 3 is next. How are you guys doing so far? Do you want to
Good.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, somebody brought up NORAD. NORAD. What? That's been kind of quiet through all of this, right? You would think that there would be, they track all this stuff, right?
Be right back, guys. I'm going to try and get a hold of Marc.
NORAD is NORAD's the best in terms of trying to figure out information. They drive me crazy because the way that system is set up is, it is funded by a significant amount of U.S. tax dollars and Canadian tax dollars. And so they've set it up very interesting because it's exempt from FOIA. It's exempt from any information. And you're like, well, this is silly. It's even more silly because I think the Canadian government actually will provide more NORAD information than the U.S. And you're like, but all the NORAD station, the headquarters is in damn Colorado. What do you mean you can't tell me this or that? And I've always said one of these days, if I ever get the money, I'd love to fight a Watergate-esque battle against NORAD in that at least provides some transparency to everything, to anything. And I think, Bruce, I think you mentioned this earlier. It's very frustrating for me to cover this topic because the kind of secrecy or the caginess out of the Department of Defense, that's not how things are supposed to work. In a democracy, the American people are supposed to have informed consent. Yep. We can't, and that's always been my big thing in covering this topic. That's what I got into it. Either, there's officials who are in places of power that are batshit crazy, something weird's going on, or we're all being lied to and duped. But any one of those is significant. But the people can't make a true decision there in informed consent. They can't tell their lawmakers, "Hey, I don't give a shit about this program. Let's skip the border wall."
And that's exactly the point. I mean, quite often there is nothing there. And, right. I'm just so surprised with governments not understanding and bureaucracies not understanding basic comms. Just come out and just lay it out. There's this propensity to redact information and to, hide behind things. It's pointless most of the time. Just come out and say, you know what, this is what we're looking at, and lay it out there. And that's part of your job.
See,
there will be times where you can't.
How do we know that they've done that? Yeah. Some people are not going to be satisfied if it doesn't reach,
yep.
Like I said, tour of Area 51 S4 levels, then,
and you're right.
Really
Some
care
people
less about, some grainy black and white naval
yep.
footage.
And some people won't be satisfied. They won't believe all the information is out there, and it doesn't matter if everything's laid out. But we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
We're nowhere near there, and we're at the point where we know that just budgetary. We know that this amount of money is being spent to do this, and yet what have we seen for information? and accountability. It's not there. And you got to get to that point before you even look at anything else. It's amazing.
Yeah, there is certainly a black budget, and there are certainly X-plane programs. That's sort of my forte is aviation history and experimental aircraft. I think that anybody that's interested in this subject at least needs to look into that because certainly a certain percentage over the course of the subject has been experimental aircraft, and UFOs has been a great cover story. That's undoubtable, So how much of that is going on now? How much of it is cover for stuff that maybe we've developed, or maybe foreign adversaries have developed some sort of hybrid drone, or something that can do things, or maybe there's something else going on with holographic projection. Who
knows?
Certainly, things a laser beam or a hologram can do a lot more than a blimp would as far as defying physics. So I think we need to be open to a lot of things for some of these cases. And ultimately, we need to look at each of the cases individually because there might be different things in different circumstances. And some of them may be prosaic. In fact, the history has demonstrated that most cases are prosaic. Right. Skeptics and believers alike will tell you that, 90% is stuff that's misidentified.
Gentlemen, I'm gonna hop right in here because we only have about a minute. Marc lost the internet. That's what would happen there. So he's not going to return, unfortunately. My question is, do you guys want to just go to the bottom of the hour, or do you want to go the distance for one more hour? It's up to you guys.
What's the distance? 1 more hour?
Yeah.
I can go 1 more hour.
I'm good.
All right, let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys, and on behalf of my audience, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. In our 30 seconds, Bruce, I'll tell you, I wish I can tell you almost for a fact that if you had an opportunity to see how government communications work, you would be appalled. I mean, in the U.S., to the point where it takes 40 people in 3 weeks to send a tweet. It is appalling, the bureaucracy and the levels of layers. And that's one of the things I've tried to express to people all the time. And I think, Michael, you've hit on this as well. In terms of cover-up, just bureaucratic inefficiency, the greatest cover-up that exists.
Oh, yeah.
It is just appalling. And that's I just interviewed a former Undersecretary of Public Affairs.
1 sec, guys. Hold that thought, Tim. Hold that thought. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to say thank you to everyone tuning on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free for you by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Cacology. Cacology is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. The panel of UFO media continues tonight on the show, and we are down to 3. We had to say goodnight to Marc Patrone as well. He lost internet coverage, so unfortunately he's not going to be able to return, but we still got a great panel with Tim McMillan from The Debrief, from Vancouver, BFC Communications. We have Bruce Claggett, and blogger, UFO researcher, paranormal researcher, and writer, researcher, of everything that is weird and strange, Michael Huntington. Gentlemen, thank you so much for continuing on. We're going to go the distance with you guys now tonight. And right before the break, we were talking kind of about government. And Tim, you were jumping in on the break about the bureaucracy that goes on with a story like this, because it really is divided on whether or not this stuff should come out about UFOs.
Sure. And what we were talking about on the break is just the bureaucratic inefficiency in communications in general. And this is a problem across all boards and aspects of the defense, Department of Defense. And it wasn't a few weeks ago, I was speaking with a former Undersecretary of Defense for Public Affairs, so the Chief Public Affairs. And them being out of the Department of Defense, they could talk candidly. They didn't want to talk on the record, but they could talk candidly about just how inefficient it is and how ridiculous. When they came into office, realizing they recounted a story about it literally taking 3 weeks to get a tweet put out about something, because you have all these different equities that are involved, and that's one of the things that's. I'll be very interested to see that the report does come out Friday, because if it does, I don't know that it's necessarily a great thing, because in order to do a true comprehensive report across all aspects of the U.S. government, it would take so many different equities involved in it. And none of these people can agree. None of these people can agree. The U.S. government is extremely territorial. And so, the Air Force will fight with the Navy if it feels like the Navy is encroaching on their territory. This is how, I give the example, this is how we got the Apache helicopter and the A-10 Warthog, is because the Army didn't feel like the Air Force was providing close air support adequately, and so they wanted a helicopter. The Air Force felt like that was BS, it was their job. So each of them just spent billions and billions and billions of dollars to develop their own things. Like, he's like kids that got mad and said, I'm going to take my ball and go home, except it's billions of tax dollars. And so it really, really is. I mean, that's one of the things that just, it's so cumbersome. You can have so many people, you could have 10 agencies or entities agree and say, yeah, let's do this. And then one go, nah, I don't like it for X number of reasons. And it can just throw a whole monkey wrench in the whole deal. I do believe, any report is going to go. I mean, it was the Intel Committee that requested it. So it was Congress that requested it. So that report's going to go to them first. And if indeed they're going to release it publicly Friday, which like I've said, I have no reason to believe that they are, I'll be honest. But if they are, I would anticipate, because it would go to Congress first, by Wednesday or Thursday, we'll know. In fact, by Wednesday or Thursday, I imagine someone will report on that, because you have reporters that are, DC bureau people who are deeply embedded in the different committees and everything, and well sourced. I think that they would get copies of it. They're good at that. And so, everybody keeps waiting for Friday as the day, but I'd be on the lookout for, it could be as soon as today. It's Tuesday for me here in Germany, or it could come Wednesday or Thursday. You could find out whether that report's coming and what it's going to contain.
Michael, what do you think that report is going to contain, considering the bureaucracy? Is it about the secrets like Stephen Greenstreet spoke of? I mean, I don't see us getting into Roswell. I don't see us getting into Phoenix Lights or anything previous to the 2004 Nimitz incident. I think it's all a controlled variable that they want the public to be as stupid as possible on this topic. They don't want to give us knowledge.
Well, I don't know if that's the case. I do agree with Tim. I don't think that really this it's going to be. It's not going to be a comprehensive report. It wasn't a multi-year study like Project Blue Book. This was something that came in, snuck into a budget and sort of caught some people with their pants down. So, then once the politicians took it serious, and the naval intelligence and all those guys had to start, at least looking into it. Word is they didn't have the whole, of the military force looking into it. It was probably just a handful of guys, as it's always been the case, with this subject. A handful of people, generally not versed in the subject, maybe some scientific background a little bit here and there, certainly military intelligence background. So it's not going to be really comprehensive, and it's not going to be, full history of UFOs, with an analysis of all the different, projects and all that. There may be some reference to that this subject has been around. It's moved into a sort of legitimacy, through rebranding, into UAP. So, I don't think you'll see the word UFO too much popping up. You'll see UAP, to give legitimacy to the subject, so to speak. And I think it would be very narrow upon military cases, what we're hearing is, within the past, few decades, although there's 50 years of even military cases, before, the Nimitz events. So I think a lot of that is going to be glossed over. There will be some recommendations, maybe, for some science. I think it might be, again, I don't see a big project coming out of it. I don't think they're going to announce a new blue book. They may, say that they're going to continue with the task force and require, some sort of records that will be, maybe a report, maybe annual report would be interesting. I think that would keep a lot of people intrigued with that. But yeah, a lot of it I think is going to deal with at least the clandestine part of it, the stuff that's going to be secret. It's probably going to deal, with drones, stuff that we do, civilian stuff, because there's a lot of civilian stuff that's going on. There's experimental, balloon drones and balloons and all kinds of, drones that and rockets and jets that a lot of civilians are using. And we are entering the drone age. Within the next 10 years, 15 years, the skies are going to be filled with, drones, as many people think, delivering stuff. So all this is going to have to be eventually organized, computerized, so to speak. And so I think this is sort of the way to eventually do that, to keep the skies tracked and surveilled for our benefit, for the benefit of commerce, for the benefit of national security. I also agree with Tim. I think there's foreign drone incursions that have occurred and continue to be witnessed and reported. So I think that's the sort of stuff, the pragmatic stuff, that I think is going to be in the report. There's not going to be alien, visitation revelations. There will be recognition that there's probably life out there. Whether or not it's come here, I don't think we're going to get, a big Roswell reveal party.
Tim, I want to ask you before I bring Bruce in, what would be the impact if Luis Elizondo and Chris Mellon, when they go public, stopped using the countries Russia and China in their sentences? How long do you think it would be before the media picked that up?
That's a good question. Real quick before I answer that, I just want to piggyback on something that Michael just mentioned.
Sure.
First of all, I can say with a very high degree of certainty that nothing examined that will come out in the report goes beyond 2004. So the Nimitz events are going to be the longest that they go back to. Now, if it is any consolation, I can say also with an extremely high degree of certainty that the people who have been involved in the quote UAP task force, who for the last 4 years or so, even before they formally acknowledged it, are actually and surprisingly very well versed in the UFO topic. Far more versed than, and nothing knocking him, far more versed than Lou Elizondo, far more versed than Chris Mellon, far more versed. And so a lot of the concerns that I think the UFO community expresses, like, do they even know the history? Do they know about the this and this and this? It wouldn't shock me if some people in the UFO community have even spoken to these individuals unwittingly. But now back to the the original question, what would happen if they started saying it isn't? I believe at least Lou Elizondo has more recently, and I think Chris Mellon has always been, a little more direct, even maybe than Lou has, in saying he believes it's aliens. I mean, Chris has said it. I think he said it to Mick West not that long ago, and so we didn't see everybody go, holy.
No, but if on the mainstream though, if they eliminated the words China and Russia from that topic, because the media doesn't want to talk UFOs, they want to talk Russia, China, because to quote my good friend Bruce in the newsroom a number of years ago, if it bleeds, it leads. Okay, and with China and Russia, that bleeds, which means it leads. But if they stopped using Russia and China in their sentences, I think that would change the entire media directive. Not immediately, but eventually the media would catch on. Whoa, these guys used to talk Russia, China. Now they're not. Why is that? I think it would be a perfect media strategy for them.
Maybe. I don't know. But like you said, if it bleeds, it leads. And the reason that works is people like an enemy. They like something to blame all their problems on. They like an enemy to point to. They like, because they can overcome an enemy. If all of my woes, is Russia, or if you live in Russia, if all of your woes are the United States, and those woes may be, you lost your job. It could have a whole bunch of things that have absolutely nothing to do with those entities. But as long as, you give somebody that enemy, it gives them something to point to. It gives them something to point to and say, well, if we just defeated Russia, or if we just defeated America, life would be great. If you come out and said it's not any of these enemies or entities that we can point to, I'm not sure what the reaction would be. And, the unknown, and we've talked about this before, both privately and publicly, Dave, is that the unknown is a very chaotic place for people to exist in. The mind does not like that unknown. And that's why I think that we have a propensity, whether people are extremely skeptical or people are, adamantly believers, just because they choose to be, or they've had personal experiences. A lot of speculation and mental gymnastics goes into it, and it goes on both sides. I think it's important to understand that, because I see that in some of the debunking. When you really lay it down on paper, you go, there's a lot of mental gymnastics here that has to go on. A lot of things have to go in place. But that's because we don't like the unknown. Like, at least give me something I can point to, so I don't have to go to bed at night wondering what the heck is this or that. And so I don't know. I think if they just came out and said, it's not Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, it's not us, it's something else. I don't know what the impact would be. I think the media would have a hard time running that, because it wouldn't, like you said, it doesn't bleed it, lead it. It's not giving anybody something to point to.
Well, I would say that, what a lot of people would suggest after that is they're going to come up with, either an ultra-terrestrial or an extraterrestrial, or, some sort of secret civilization theory. And that's what's going to be the next thing that's going to be sold or not sold. I think it may turn off a lot of legitimate mainstream reporters if, people are saying, well, it very well could be, an Atlantean civilization from the Middle Earth, from inside the Hollow Earth or Antarctica. And there are legitimately people that have suggested that. Even Lou Elizondo has alluded by suggesting that people read certain books, about undersea kingdoms of, other civilizations. So all these things, need to be taken into consideration also. Like, how do you go next with this? With some sort of either an extraterrestrial hypothesis or ultra-terrestrial or whatever. I think people are generally open to that, but how do you demonstrate this? How do we get evidence to demonstrate that? You got the mainstream's attention. How are you going to get mainstream science to look at this without, getting into Atlantean theories and, big, deep conspiracy theories?
Sure.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's going to come up. And if we have hearings, and the preponderance of the people giving testimony in that hearing, if they're ancient alien theorists, I think that is probably going to turn a lot of people off, because that's really where people outside of these communities view the subject, through popular media, through reality TV. And the guy with the hair, saying it's aliens, he's the face of ufology to a lot of people.
Very true. I want to get Bruce in here on this because, sorry, Michael, because of the comment in regards to if it bleeds, it leads, Bruce, regarding this, because I will never forget that conversation you and I had in the newsroom in Vancouver about that. And for you, listening to, the government cover-up, the government sanctions on this project, we're not, as Tim said, dropping a bomb here, that we're not going previous to 2004 in the USS Nimitz. I mean, where do we go with this from a media standpoint?
Oh, that's a good question. And it comes down to, if not this, then what? And news conferences are really interesting things. They're interesting because you want to have, you've got two different games happening. You've got a narrative that has to be controlled by those delivering a news conference. In this case, the Pentagon, the government, has their own story to give you. And as a reporter, you've got the job of representing the public and acting on their behalf. And journaling, that's what a journalist does. They observe, they journal what is being said. So if I hear it is not this, and I think about it as a journalist, then I have to go to the then what? And here's the sad part of that question. There may not be an answer. And if there is not an answer, boy, now we're in a whole different game, because there are so many people right now looking to Friday for an answer. And you know what? I'm not as versed in this as your other guests, but I would guess that you're not going to get the answer, or an answer that satisfies not only the people that follow it closely, but anyone that casually follows this or is happening upon it by accident. And you're not going to get an answer. And then that just leaves you not satisfied. Best thing a journalist could do is start to ask questions. But you know what? At the end of the day, I don't think they're going to get an answer to those questions, even if it's handled right.
Yeah, real quick, David, on what Bruce just said, and this is tangentially related, but as that comes out, and other media outlets or individuals start trying to figure out, well, what the heck is this? Because let's say they come out and say it's real, but we don't know what it is. My plea to anyone else in the media, I almost wrote an article on this, is ask the right people. And it is so frustrating to me. I think I noticed this in your comments when somebody asked me what was my opinion on Neil deGrasse Tyson being dismissive and everything, or when I read about astronomers and all of this stuff. And I'm thinking, that's not, for reasons I cannot explain, some people won't stop and tell the media journalists, hey, I'm an astronomer. You're talking about, people are saying they're seeing a mechanical device within the Earth's atmosphere flying around. I am not an aviation expert. I am not an intelligence expert. I am not versed in reconnaissance. I look out into the cosmos. So I am not qualified to tell you what is flying around inside Earth. And that's probably one of the most frustrating things, is that people oftentimes, because of this idea alien, they think that Neil deGrasse Tyson or any astronomer, well, you have the answer, right? No, they don't, because they very admittedly say we searched for intelligent extraterrestrial life but haven't found it. But their expertise, if you need to talk to somebody about that search for life way out in the cosmos, or you need to talk to somebody about astrophysics and everything, great. Those are your people. But that's one of the most frustrating things for me, is to see a lot of science communicators, offer the opinion as if fact about intelligence matters, about the Department of Defense, about military. And it's like, you're not, it's nothing against it. You're just not qualified. Like, it's not your beat. It's not an area that you cover. And in some instances, It's kind of the Dunning-Kruger effect. You're just, because you're an expert at one thing, it qualifies you to comment on anything. And I think that appeal to authority is very strong in the public. We know that, if it has PhD behind the title, then people are like, oh, well, hell, he's a doctor. He must know, So that this is less of a commentary, but more of a plea out there, both the public to demand, let's hear from some people who may be qualified to give this, some former intelligence people who've written intelligence analysis reports who can tell us, well, what does that mean? What does that really mean? Or aerospace engineers. Let's let the astronomers talk about astronomy. It's a fascinating subject. I love it. I want to talk to them about that. But I don't know that astronomers are qualified to talk about UFOs.
Yeah.
Very true. Very true, gentlemen. We have 30 seconds before we have to go to break here. In regards to your comment, though, too, Tim, take it in a different world. Even when the first narrative of the UFOs started hitting the public under the To the Stars Academy, you and I had long talks, both on the air and off the air, about how the media was not doing any point-counterpoint and was not investigating or interviewing people such as yourself or Richard Dolan or Grant Cameron or anybody along those lines who've been covering this subject for years. And I think that goes back to the ball being dropped on this subject entirely, and now we have a giant mess of UFO garbage on the ground, and we're trying to sweep it up, but we don't know if we can. Tim McMillan from The Debrief, from BFC Communications, Bruce Claggett, Michael Huntington, one of the great road travelers of the paranormal and bloggers. We'll be back with these gentlemen for the final half hour right after this on Spaced Out Radio.
I'm going to recycle my beer. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem.
I tell you what's interesting, Dave, is I've talked to some physicists, recently about it and everything. It's interesting that they seem to be more open to this kind of interdimensional theory than alien. Actually, they directly said that. They're like, I could be more open to some sort of dimensional, extra dimensionary type something than I am aliens visiting from afar. And so, I think that's why I'm always cautious. Everything's on the table till it's not, and I think that helps taking people off. But I read the Washington Examiner did a good job. I think they had a guest contributor who was a physicist, and it was an article entitled, I think, How the Navy could Catch UFOs or something. And he put it in a physics perspective that, what if these were fourth dimension type objects or something, and how you could prove that by setting up cameras at different angles. If you captured it on one angle and then a 90-degree angle, it would appear 3D in one and two-dimensional in the other. That's fascinating. I think that's kind of and hopefully it will see more of that if indeed the report comes out saying, yes, it's real, but we don't know. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier, that now it's time to start saying, well, what is it? And I think you need everything in terms of what is it? What is the state of Russia's aerospace technology? What is the state of China's? For that kind of stuff, for me, I'm going to turn to the China experts. I'm going to turn to the Russia experts. What is the likelihood it could be interdimensional? I'm going to turn to those physicists who that's their expertise. That's what they've done. They've done experiments and considered this stuff.
Yeah, but you look at how Avi Loeb from Harvard got absolutely crucified for coming out and saying he believes that Oumuamua was a spaceship of some sort.
Oh, yeah. And I wrote a big article on Loeb and interviewed him several times. And that's what's interesting about the topic itself is that it shows off a lot of human. There's a lot of humanity in the subject, if nothing else, because it kind of shows off our own biases or how we feel comfortable in the world around us.
Yeah, but Tim, and we'll get into this in the next break. I'm just going to write this down because sometimes I'll forget. We'll get into where is the trust, okay? Because, and I don't want to get too much into it and ruin it through the commercial break here, but there is very little trust in what we got going on. I mean, I think everybody shit themselves laughing when NASA came out and said, oh, well, we're finally going to start studying UFOs. You know, I mean, really, you guys have been known, and whistleblowers have come out that you guys have been scrubbing photos for years on this, and now you're going to come out and hop on the game like, oh, well, we're going to start this? I mean, it's the same bullshit as SETI or the SETI Institute. You know what I'm saying? Where they're saying they haven't caught anything outside of one signal back in the 1970s or whatever the hell it was. Right? It's just ridiculous, but we'll get into that in the next half hour, you know?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it definitely is, you know, but at the same time, it's hard to kind of parse through what is, what's just making sense of the world and what's not, you know, for some people. I think that's, you know, it kind of fuels both sides of it. Either there has to be a cover up or it's debunked and there's nothing to it.
True.
Because it makes sense of the world. You know,
very true. Very true.
The idea that the Air Force or NASA or whatever, you know, wouldn't be looking into it seems absurd.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. And we'll get into that, guys, when we come back.
Okay.
Here. Got to tell you a quick story. So yesterday I take my son out for Father's Day and we go shopping, and we went up to one of the sports stores up in town, get myself a pair of shoes and get him a new pair of shoes. And I give him my bank card so that way he could pay because it's Father's Day and I shouldn't pay. So I give him my bank card to pay. And so I'm showing him how to use the debit machine. And he punches everything in, and then afterwards, the lady behind the till gives him like a gift card because we spent so much there that they gave us a gift card, a $30 gift card for the next time we come on in. So that's cool. He goes, so Dad, what do I do with this? I said, well, normally you put it in a wallet. He's like, but I don't have a wallet. You know, so we had to go over to Walmart next to get him a wallet. My God, I forgot how much a wallet means to a kid in growing up. Totally forgot. He came home and he literally empties his entire piggy bank, and it's all in his wallet now because he wants to feel like he's got something to offer now, right? Hold on, guys. Here we go. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears. We want to remind you that if you've missed most of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we introduce our UFO panel. The media has been the topic all night long leading to June 25th and how the mainstream has reacted to this subject. We have blogger and paranormal UFO researcher Michael Huntington. From the debrief.org, we have Tim McMillan. And from BFC Communications out of Vancouver, British Columbia, we have Bruce Claggett. Gentlemen, you know, one of the things that I want to discuss here regarding this topic is the distrust that the public has, not only for the government, but when, you know, a group like NASA comes out and says, after all these years of exploring space, that now they're going to concentrate on UFOs to see if any of their satellites, any of their spaceships, any of the ISS will be able to find them aliens. And yet we've seen, like especially with NASA, we've seen camera feeds cut off when air or strange craft or anomalies have been flying by. We've seen and heard from whistleblowers, if we can believe their story, coming out saying NASA has scrubbed photos for years of UFOs. Now, do we have proof of that? No. We can only take someone at their word. But I mean, isn't this a little funny that NASA, after all these times, is wanting to come say, hey, we're going to get into the UFO game, and the media is like, okay, NASA's in. NASA's in, like cheering them on, like a parade to the UFO party. You know what I'm saying, Michael?
NASA's been involved in the UFO party all the way back. They have just like every other government department has been accused of being part of the cover-up. As you said, there's tons of footage of strange anomalies that have been reported during pretty much every historical mission. Now, whether or not it's space junk or creatures from another world, I think you probably lean towards the most likely of, there's a lot of stuff floating around, Earth orbit. So there's going to be a lot of space junk and a lot of things misidentified. A lot of things floating along, with space shuttles and space stations. But as far as, NASA conspiracy, ultimately NASA is supposedly the place where a lot of, stuff went to be looked at by their scientists, whether or not they're going to step up with some sort of, long-term investigation. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. It might be some sort of, short report. Hopefully, they actually develop some sort of programmatic thing, legitimate sort of science. But, I've heard rumors of some of the people that are going to be involved with that NASA effort. So you might see some, repeat faces in previous, government investigations into this, being involved in this program. So, and certainly Robert Bigelow has a lot of connections with NASA currently because of his business ventures. So, maybe the NASA, thing will be, what the task force isn't going to be. Maybe it's going to be something that is going to be legitimate, or maybe it's going to be, more funding for fringe science, or maybe it's going to be another whitewash. There's a lot of there have been a lot of different administrations with a lot of different leadership under a lot of different political entities over multitude of decades. So, we're not dealing with a monolithic thing. The Air Force from the 50s is different than the one now, and, the Navy and all the different intelligence groups, they have a long continuum, but, a lot of stuff, you're not dealing with a lot of the same people. So, it's probably not the same cover-up. Whether or not they're going to be competent enough to bring some actual science, that'll be interesting to see.
Bruce Claggett, let's get you in on this one. How do we earn that trust? How do we build that trust that we can trust what the government is telling us, without feeling that we're being covered up? We know the cover-ups are happening. As Tim said earlier, they're only going back in this new report to 2004 Nimitz case. They're not talking about Roswell or Phoenix. Or NASA now coming out, like Michael just said, about coming out and talking that they're getting into the UFO game. I mean,
well, it's you know what? It's like when we.
Let's go like that again. See if we can get him back here. His stream seems
weaker.
There we go. We're trying to get you back here, Bruce. Your stream seems to be cutting out. Tim, I'll ask you that question while we're waiting for Bruce here in regards to it. You're back, Bruce. You're back.
I'm back.
There we go.
Was I the only one gone?
Yes.
No, it's almost like NASA is being used as a credibility source because NASA says it now. It's got to be real. It's used as a credibility game. The thing to remember, though. And this is a Canadian example. A very shocking thing happened in January in my country, and that was when one of the largest public relations firms, Edelman, came out with a confidence report and found that 50% of Canadians don't trust the media, and that was broken down even further. So now you still have this lack of trust, period, but it's moved over beyond government to the institution of the media, the estate of the media, and the trust isn't there. So now you're grasping at.
I think you went to say grasping at
and
straws.
to find some sort of credibility, and I was like, yeah, well, there you go. And this latest one is, of course, NASA. Got to be true. Well, look, even NASA's doing it, and that's speaking to the greater mass of people, not people that follow this closely. It's just the uninitiated masses. That's all it is.
It's ignorance on the media
people
part too.
I was going to say, some people at NASA might just like the idea of, oh, you want to spend some money on telescopes? Hey, we're in, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, budgets are a big thing, and now you've got a reason to get more people interested in the branding of NASA. Now it's kind of even more interesting than just looking at space. If they're into UFOs, wow, there you go.
Tim, let's get your take on this. You're all muted there, Tim.
There we go. Yeah. There's always paradigms of the time, academically, scientifically, you name it. And so the idea of looking at anything interesting like UFOs or something that's kind of out of that, it's considered fringe, it's out of that paradigm. It's difficult for people to break camp with that when you're a scientific or academic institution or agency like NASA. But NASA they've been kind of opening up to that in the last couple of years, quietly, whether people have realized it or not. And it was a couple months ago, I published an article and interviewed several NASA scientists about their alien technosignatures program. So, 2019, they started funding the technosignatures hunt. This is the first SETI, so not SETI, the Institute, but the Search for Extraterrestrial Life. It's the first time NASA has funded SETI research in almost 20 years. And so they're hunting again, but rather than what SETI Institute is doing, so a lot of the radio signature stuff, they're trying to hone in on being able to narrow down and identify not whether or not there's biological life on an exoplanet, but rather smart life with technology, which is fascinating. And that was when I talked to the program manager. That's exactly what he said. He said, we're hunting smart aliens, not dumb ones. But in that, in the article that I put out, in that technosignature workshop, and they put out a big, 80-page report after the workshop was finished. It would probably surprise a lot of people to realize the things that the NASA scientists were talking about they were open to, including but not limited to there being archaeological remains of crashed extraterrestrial technology in our solar system, on our moon, on Mars, on Earth. They specifically said, they said this is not crazy. We don't know a lot. We know virtually nothing about the archaeology of the bodies just in our solar system. And so I think it's interesting. I think you'll see more openness to certain things, whether it be like UFOs or this idea of exo-archaeological pursuits on the moon and Mars, simply because I think whereas some of this stuff may have seemed crazy at one time, the technology wasn't there, the science wasn't there. When we see stuff that's advancing right now, like quantum mechanics or in the quantum technology fields, you realize, and this is really weird stuff. We may have to step back and readjust, our kind of outlook, because there is some evidence for weirder things than we have really accepted. And if, I've said this before, if history is any bit of an indicator, the only thing we can kind of say for certain is that everything that we consider as self-evident fact today will probably be proven to be false and something else different totally, 500 years from now, 1,000 years from now. If you went back thousands of years, people would tell you the sun was brought up by the chariot god or whatever. There's so much. And so I think that's one of the things I always try to keep in perspective for myself is, and even when you're thinking of theoretical construct, of what could UFOs be, what could a lot of things be, is to try not to limit yourself to the point where, say people, Ancient Aliens, great show, great series, all those things. It's entertaining to kind of reflect back and say, well, what they called gods and angels were really aliens. But could 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now, there be a similar type series, and they're looking back on us now going, they thought it was aliens. It's really X, Y, or Z, But that's what fuels human pursuit of knowledge. That's where we advance, is that. And that's why I have kind of been critical, or you'll see me battle with some quote unquote debunkers or things, is because I think that it's okay to be pragmatic. It's good to be skeptical. It's good not to just be credulous and believe everything, but it's also, totally silly to believe that we know it all right now. They were like, well, we are as smart as we'll ever be. This is silly. Some things are silly. So I don't know, I don't know whether it's an organized, quote unquote, cover up by certain people like NASA or whatever, or whether it's just humanity. Like, we evolve, our knowledge base evolves, and we become more open to certain things, like the earth revolving around the sun rather than the sun god bringing it up. We become open to this idea that maybe there is stuff, physics, mathematics allows for certain stuff that we've dismissed because we didn't have the means to, study it, predict it, replicate it at that time. But it doesn't mean we won't be able to.
Well, if there is a new science coming, if there is a paradigm shift that is going to result to, change the current view of things, the methodology, in order to determine, what is real, in reference to these anomalies, ultimately the bridge is going to have to be spanned between the existing paradigm and the new paradigm. And the existing paradigm is, the paradigm that you're going to have to convince that the new one is a legitimate paradigm. You're going to have to demonstrate to them through some sort of scientific methodology that is evidence-based. And you're going to have to present it professionally to academia, and you're going to have to eventually build up some sort of consensus, a view of reality. People are going to have to, recognize that there's a paradigm shift. But, that gives us all the problems of, when you're dealing with something, a phenomena or phenomena that is hard to measure, it's hard to pin down. What do you have to present, to existing mainstream science? And what has ufology done? Largely, ufology is not really done, science that can be presented to scientific establishment. And that is what's going to happen. Ufology is filled with amateurs, largely. There's a scientific coalition for UAP studies. There are legitimate, scientists that are willing to look at this and willing to, write papers. We need to get back to that, I think. There's been too much of a focus on the entertainment stuff, that if we're really trying to push a paradigm, get the government to fund, studies of, this paradigm, this phenomena, these anomalies, some which will undoubtedly lead to scientific advancement. Whether it's mundane or not, if people are seeing things, we need to know how that works, within our reality. Maybe we can get some funding from government. I'm not hopeful about the government part, but I think what the community needs to do is try to, start funding some projects, start getting some of the scientific data, and start presenting that, to scientists, mainstream, and politicians. And it can't be an episode of Ancient Aliens. It has to be, astronomers helping, to determine, study cases and analyze data and deal with probability and all that. You need those sort of approaches. Hopefully we can get to that, but ufology needs to get itself in order, I think. It can't just howl at the politicians and blame science. You didn't pay attention to us enough, because science sees it as a demarcated thing. Ufology is a pseudoscience. It uses the terminology, but it doesn't actually produce any sort of thing that is studyable. Heshtelen maybe is someplace, where it's localized long term, but elsewhere that hasn't existed. And maybe we need to get back to that sort of approach if we're going to build up, evidence to help support changes in the consensus paradigm.
Sure.
Well, we will see what's coming down as we got about 3.5 minutes to go here. We've got time to give each and every one of you a final word here. And Bruce, let's start with you.
Final word, we've got to ask good questions and keep on asking those questions. And also hold the people that have information to account. And that could even be, hey, do you know everything? And if the answer is no, we don't know everything, we still have inconclusive results, that's fine. Accept that and report that. And then see if there's a need to do some more research. That is something that, from my stance, that the media, the mainstream and popular media could certainly push for and use conferences when they cover things like Pentagon, Washington, D.C., the military, in Canada, where I'm from, the Department of Defense, the Prime Minister's office, Parliament Hill. You've got to ask those questions to find out what is the involvement, what is known, and that's it.
All right. My final word, 1 minute for you, Michael.
It's interesting times that we live in, I guess. These things are unusual and unique, these little blips in the media, but do try to keep everything in perspective for those that are hopeful of some sort of big D disclosure. There's been plenty of disclosures in the past, the Roswell report, and Project Blue Book and Condon committees and all sorts of different things have been revealed over the years that people thought was, the reality of things. It'll be interesting to see. Mostly it'll be interesting to see how people react. But I think ultimately, for us in the field, it's going to keep going. But for a lot of regular people, it'll be a blip, maybe.
All right. Tim McMillan, you get the final word, and we got about a minute to go with you.
Okay, yeah, I mean, Bruce and Michael covered it well. I think that if I had any final word, it would be, just try to keep everything in perspective. Like both Bruce and Michael said about asking good questions and also being critical thinkers, but also have some fun. Don't take it so serious. It doesn't matter whether it can be aliens, but let's just have fun. Let's not make it this really kind of torturous pursuit. And bear in mind that like Michael brought up very, really spoke on very well, that in terms of bridging gaps of paradigms and everything, is understand that some people believe certain things adamantly, and they may have personal experience. Maybe they've seen a UFO. Maybe they've had any personal experience. And I don't discount any of that, but understand that there is a large segment of the population that hasn't. And so you've got to bridge that gap. So what seems self-evident to somebody who's had personal experience, so they personally know something, realize that the majority hasn't. And so, a report saying there's 120 sightings that we can't explain, it's not us. We're not sure if it's Russia or China, but we're going to check it out. That's more significant than maybe people realize, because that's kind of one of those steps of bridging the gap, like Michael said.
Right. Gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much for coming on our panel tonight. Michael Huntington, Tim McMillan, Bruce Claggett, along with Marc Patrone, Stephen Greenstreet, and Ryan Recker. A great mainstream media panel here talking UFOs leading up to June 25th. Thank you so much, gentlemen. As we start to close this out, I'll get you guys to hold on. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone tuning us in on our chat rooms, on YouTube, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, Twitch, the Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and all the snarkers and snarkettes playing along at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, yep, we've got room for them too. Good night.